Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another Countess Lita stream. I am going to be your host for an evening of mostly chit-chatting, but intense chit-chatting with lots of opinions. Before we get started, I just want to thank you for being here, for existing, for watching the show, for lurking, for loving, for laughing with me. You know, when I first started doing this stream stuff, I didn't think that I would be able to do just chatting streams. Because I felt like just talking to nobody was not, you know, all that interesting. Oh, that's a, you can see my, a blank screen behind me there. That's where we're about to set up the lecture. I didn't think it was even, I didn't think I could even do just chatting streams, because I feel like if you want to just chat with people, you gotta have some people to chat with. So what I like to do is over-prepare a little bit. I like to get really prepared, so that when I sit down to do just chatting, I know what it is I'm just chatting about. This is a stream that I feel has been a long time coming, in terms of, I'm gonna go ahead and turn my theme song down a little bit here. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome. Kill that for just a second. Whiteboard. My little... you know, I may not even do too much BGM today. I don't know. I like a little BGM because I feel like I'm not talking in silence, but we'll see if it sticks around. Hey, good morning. Good morning! My greeting is good evening, but I know it's not good evening to everybody who tunes in, so good morning if it's your morning. Happy morning to you. There are days I stream in the daytime, but being a vampire, I tend to mostly stream at night. So good morning to you. Today we are going to be talking a little bit about one of my favorite topics, tabletop role-playing games. Hello, chat. Hello, Ariat. Thank you for modding the chat. Appreciate you. Gonna get a little spicy in here? Probably not. I think we're all civil. I think we're all adults. I think we can all have a civil conversation without getting too exercised, but I do welcome people's thoughts and opinions. I was not gonna set up a hand cam, but then I realized I have a few things I want to show on hand cam, so I do have hand cam. But to lurk? No problem. Lurking is also fine. Remember to keep that volume on low rather than muted, or else... No, I'm messing with you. But yeah, if you lurk on Twitch, I love you. It's totally fine by me. I'm always happy to have people who are just hanging out and watching and listening in. And because we are on YouTube today, the VOD will remain up. Hopefully without any alterations, because I'm not going to be playing any music or anything like that. Today we're going to be talking about a little game that I like to play, which is called Dungeons & Dragons. I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons for most of my life. Well, not most of my life. Well, you put it in another way. Most of the time there's been Dungeons & Dragons that I've been playing Dungeons & Dragons. I'm 424, going on 425 years old, so. But, I played a lot of D&D, so I'm going to talk about it. And I'm going to talk about why I'm just so controversial yet so brave. My YouTube title is a particularly, like, my YouTube title is like, you know what, I'm just gonna say the hook of the stream, which is I'm gonna talk about mostly the later editions of D&D. I'm gonna talk about 3, 5, 4, and 5. And I really like 4, but I'm gonna talk about why, and I'm gonna talk about 3, 5 a lot, and talk about why I don't like 3, 5 very much at all. And when I package that, because D&D only came out 422 years ago. D&D 1970, actually. Before I start the formal programming, I would like to explain the game of Dungeons & Dragons to you, but I'm not going to do that. I'm gonna let some smart guys explain it. Can you take it away?
Dungeons and Dragons. Satan's game. Your children, like it or not, are attracted in their weaker years to the occult, and a game like D&D fuels their imagination and makes them feel special, while drawing them deeper and deeper into the bowels of El Diablo. This afternoon, the Dead Alewives Watchtower invites you to sit in on an actual gaming session. Observe the previously unobservable as a hidden camera takes you to the inner sanctum of Dungeons and Dragons.
Gallstaff, you have entered the door to the north. You are now by yourself, standing in a dark room. The pungent stench of mildew emanates from the wet dungeon walls.
Where are the Cheetos?
They're right next to you.
I cast a spell.
Where's the Mountain Dew?
In the fridge, duh!
I want to cast a spell.
Can I have a Mountain Dew?
Yes, you can have a Mountain Dew, just go get it.
I can cast any of these, right? On the list?
Yes, any of the first level ones.
I'm gonna get
The
a
first
soda.
level ones.
Anyone want one? Hey, Graham, I'm not in the room, right?
What room?
I want to cast Magic Missile.
The room where he's casting all these spells from.
He hasn't cast anything yet.
I am, though, if you'd listen. I'm casting Magic Missile.
Why are you casting Magic Missile? There's nothing to attack here.
I'm attacking the darkness.
Fine. You attack the darkness. There's an elf in front of you.
Whoa.
That's me, right?
He's wearing a brown tunic, and he has gray hair and blue eyes.
No, I don't. I have gray eyes.
Let me see that sheet.
Well, it says I have blue, but I decided I wanted gray eyes.
Whatever. Okay, you guys can talk to each other now if you want.
Hello.
Hello.
I am Gallstaff, Sorcerer of Light.
Then how come you had to cast Magic Missile?
You guys are being attacked.
Do I see that happening?
No, you're outside by the tavern.
Cool, I get drunk.
There are 7 ogres surrounding you.
How could they surround us? I had Mordenkainen's magical watchdog cast.
No, you didn't.
I'm getting drunk. Are there any girls there?
I totally did. You asked me if I wanted any equipment before this adventure, and I said no. But I need material components for all my spells, so I cast Mordenkainen's faithful watchdog.
But you never actually
cast
cast it.
Roll the dice to see if I'm getting drunk.
Yeah, you are.
Are there any girls there?
Yeah.
I did, though. I completely said when you asked me.
No, you didn't. You didn't actually say that you were casting the spell, so now there's ogres, okay?
Ogres? Man, I got an ogre slaying knife. It's got a +9 against ogres.
You're not there. You're getting drunk.
Okay, but if there's any girls there, I want to do them.
There you have it. A frightening look into America's most frightening pastime. Remember that it's not your children's fault that they're being drawn into a satanic world of nightmare. It's their gym teacher's fault for making them feel outcast when they couldn't do one single pull-up.
God, I want to have just that background music for this whole stream. Dun 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 dun. I see some questions in the chat about that audio. That audio originates from 1996. It's done by the Dead Alewives, which was a comedy group that released it on a on like a audio, and it kind of just circulated through the nascent internet, people passing it around in MP3 form and so on. But it was actually, the audio itself has been recycled quite a bit. So I was hanging out, in another chat, and they're like, "Oh, we have this World of Warcraft machinima that uses that audio, but it's not the origin." And there's also a My Little Pony version of that. And you're saying 8-bit theater. A lot of people have done like animations to that audio, but that audio is standalone. It was recorded in 1996. But Dead Alewives. Dead Alewives is a comedy group. Pretty famous bit of goof. very famous goof. What on my board here I wrote Satanic Panic was real. That was real. There was back in the 1996. Yeah, especially in the 80s. There was Satanic Panic about Dungeons and Dragons, and how it was going to lead you to worshiping the occult and demon worship and everything. So, because you could learn to cast the real spells. There was a really famous, Jack Chick tract called Darkest Dungeons that I picked fun of a lot, where the girl is, a thief, and she sewer slides because she's her character in the game dies and she doesn't want to live without Blackleaf anymore. I can't believe I said sewer slut. I'm either getting old or I'm like too old for this. Yeah, Blackleaf. And also Tom Hanks' first movie after he did Bosom Buddies, was a D&D Satanic Panic movie based on a true story about somebody who got too into their D&D character, and it was a whole thing. That was a whole thing. So yeah, that was real. People did actually freak out. Mazes and Monsters, that's the name of the film. Yeah. The thing I remember the most is the very end where they're like, Robbie, Pardue! They yell his character name out. He like turns around because he forgot he was Robbie. Oh my god. Mazes and Monsters. It's all true. All of that was real. Where to begin? Now, I think some people in this chat are relatively familiar with Dungeons and Dragons. You're familiar with the oeuvre, so to speak. I'm gonna put my music back on because I think it covers up my like sound effects. Some of you are familiar with, the basics of D&D, right? You understand the most of it, but I'm gonna talk about it first of all, little tiny bit of history, just to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and then I'm just gonna talk about like the later editions for the most part. And like my opinions about them, because I feel like this is groundwork for me talking about why I'm going to be running a 4E campaign this year, and probably a short one. But I miss 4th edition. I think 4th edition is rad. It's very different from 5th and 3.5, and I don't have my 4E PHB with me today because I was looking for it. I couldn't find it, but I do have some other books with me, and I'm going to be talking about like these books, and I'm also going to be like dropping some trivia and knowledge. I think second is my favorite. Second is my favorite as well. And I'll talk about why second is my actual favorite, but I don't have all the books for second. I only have all the books for 3, 5, 4, and 5. So those are the ones that I have handy. I do have some books from AD&D from 1st edition. I do have some books from 2nd edition, but I have like all the books I need to run. I have for. I mean, it would be really fun to run 2nd at some point. It would take a lot more, like, prep, I think, because 2nd's tricky. But Pathfinder Supremacy? I don't know. I'm going to preface this by saying that I have never played Pathfinder. And the reason I've never played Pathfinder is because somebody told me it's just like 3.75. And I'm like, but 3.5 is ass, and I don't like it. So I never touched Pathfinder. But I have heard that Pathfinder 2 is a big improvement. I'm not qualified to discuss Pathfinder. I've never played it. If somebody wants to run Pathfinder for me, I will play it. But I will not run it because it is not anything I have any experience in running or otherwise. I do have the hand cam up today, and I think I fixed the audio issues with the hand cam, but let me know if there's any echo when I turn the hand cam on. Because I've got a couple books that I'm working through here that I'm going to be talking about today. And this is one of them. I just got this book for Christmas. And this is the history of Dungeons & Dragons, starting with wargaming. So this talks about mostly the early days of Dungeons & Dragons. I just started reading it. But I haven't really gotten that deep into it yet. But it starts about it talks about like the earliest days of Dungeons and Dragons. So like when it was a war game. Audio sounds good. Good, excellent. Yeah, sometimes when I turn the hand cam on, there's an echo because there's a microphone on the thing. But I think I turned it off. I think I fixed it today. I remembered to fix it before the stream so that I wouldn't have audio issues on the hand cam. This book talks about the earliest details of Dungeons and Dragons. Like through the 70s, not after 1980. And my first-hand experience with the game is all post-1980, so, just to put it that way. But I have played older editions of the game, and certainly read a lot of the older modules, so, we'll talk a little bit about those as well. In particular, I want to talk about Tomb of Horrors, because it's really, really interesting, but it comes up in this book, which is a Tales from the Yawning Portal. And I think Robertables had mentioned that he was going to run some stuff from this book. I think this is a really, really interesting book, okay? This is one of the earliest books to come out for D&D 5e. And what it has inside it, what it contains, is a series of modules from other editions of the game. I'm bumping my series of modules from earlier editions of the game. So it's modules from 3.5, modules from the transition from 4 to 5, modules from earlier in D&D. So it talks about like these different settings. It starts at the very beginning of levels, so it's like a level 1 module, and then it's got like a level 5 module, and then it's got like Tomb of Horrors in the very back. Now, Tomb of Horrors is really interesting, so we're going to talk a little bit about Tomb of Horrors, and like this translation of it, and also the original 1975 version of it, and like kind of compare and contrast. This is actually a pretty good conversion, but there's a couple things I want to point out about the difference between the original and the conversion, because I think that's really interesting. But I consider this book kind of an interesting master key, because you can tell a lot about the editions of D&D, but from how the modules for those editions are designed. So, one of the reasons I really like 2nd edition is that 2nd edition was the edition of D&D where storytelling became more paramount over wargaming. Because please understand that 1st edition, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, is very, very much a wargame. And it's a little bit adversarial. A lot of it is kind of you versus the module, you versus the GM. It's designed to be played like in more of a tournament setting. 2nd edition is a little bit more cooperative. And the modules for 2nd edition, they have a lot more like story to them. And 2nd edition is where a lot of the settings that we think of as D&D like really gelled. So like you don't get Dragonlance until later. You don't get Dragonlance until 2nd edition. You don't get not Pathfinder. Planescape until 2nd edition. You don't get Planescape until 2nd edition, because that's like where they were coming up. Like, yeah, it was in first. Yeah, it was in first ed. It was like advanced D&D, but like all those modules really solidified like in the 90s, right? It was like there was an AD&D version, and then in the 90s they kind of like locked in with all those different changes and like really solidified like those various settings and stuff like that. And like I want to say Ravenloft is also 2nd ed, but you can correct me on that because that might be a 1st ed one as well. But they like Strahd, which they talk about a lot, like that kind of gelled in the 90s as well. There's like a lot of wargaming like history in the older module. And then they sort of started to convert it over into like more story like through the 80s, right? So it has this shift. So if you look at like the modules from like the 70s, a lot of them are like what, like I said, is very adversarial. Like they're kind of like puzzles for you to solve. And then like was the setting, yeah, the OG adventures were first. Yeah, that's what I figured. Like in a lot of cases, like the modules were created. I didn't realize that there was a 1st edition setting book for Dragonlance. I thought the setting book was also 2nd ed. That's because all the Dragonlance books that I have, or the old ones I have, are 2nd ed. Maybe there was a 1st edition one for that. But like they're thinking about it like from a setting perspective, right? Because a lot of the modules were just like one-offs and they're weird. So like some of the modules that I have are like from the 80s and they're like really old. And then eventually they were like, let's solidify this and make like a whole segment out of it. And there's kind of that shift, right? Now, the first time I like played a campaign, it was a weird hybrid of like 1st, 2nd, and then eventually like some 3rd got stapled in there. Because it was one of those like, this is my homebrew and this is a bunch of stuff stapled together and like there's custom classes and all kinds of weird stuff like that. Which I want to say is like kind of a pretty normal home game experience for a lot of people. Because when D&D was like first getting created, it was very homebrew-ish. And in a lot of cases, like you'd take a Dragon magazine or something like, yeah, you take like a Dragon magazine or something like that, and you basically would just like take a class from it and be like, this doesn't have complete rules. So there's videos like on the internet talking about how we changed the rules to add this and this and that to the game, and it wasn't. Yeah, you would use 1st ed classes as a 2nd ed game. So if I'm ever like, oh, well, there was a 1st ed module, but then a 2nd ed, it's because a lot of 2nd ed and 1st ed kind of blur together in the way that the style of the way that the game was played, like that I remember back in those days. Like people would play 2nd edition, but then they would be like, oh, but I'm ripping this thing off from 1st edition. Like it was very loosey-goosey, I think. I don't think that the tournament style of D&D was the same through the 90s. And then when they got bought out by Wizards of the Coast, which was in the 2000s, it became like a lot more regimented in terms of like you had to have your number and you would like show up at the tournament like with your character that was that was like pre-built to a certain spec. Yeah, exactly. So you would show up with a character that was like pre-built to a certain spec, and you would have your... It's RPGA number now. It used to be the Magic the Gathering one that you would bring to the table, and you'd say, like, or no, it was RPGA, and then it got changed to the other Magic. I don't remember exactly like what the number was, but you have like a certain number, and you have a card, and you'd be like, this character is like pre-approved to play at this table, because that was a whole thing too. So in 2000 is when 3rd edition, not 3.5, but yeah, RPGA. It was RPGA, and then what was it? What's the one for Magic called? The number system. The tournament thing. I'm blanking on it, but there's like a there was like a specific, like you had to have a card. Because I had an RPGA number because I'm old school. DCI is the number. So what they did was they took, I had to remember the name of it because it's been a while since I looked at that. But they basically had an RPGA card that you would pick up, and they had those, like you get those in 3rd edition. And you take your RPGA approved card, and you would take that to the tournament table, and then your character would also like be approved. They still do these today. These are called living campaigns, right? So if you go to a con like Origins or Gen Con, and you want to go to one of the D&D official campaigns, you have to have like the character that's pre-approved. So they switched from in 2000-ish, TSR, which stands for Tactical Studies Rules, which was the original company that owned D&D, was bought by Wizards of the Coast that owned Magic the Gathering, and they merged into one company. So your RPGA number became your DCI number, which was the official Magic the Gathering number. So if you have an RPGA number, you joined before the merger, and if you have a DCI and you're playing D&D with it, then you have it after. That's the way it was. So the original D&D is published in 1974. AD&D is published in 1977. And yes, I do have a cheat sheet for this because it's like off the top. It's not off the top of my head, but obviously. 1981 there was basic, and then 2nd edition is 1989. So throughout the 90s, it was 2nd edition. Yeah, that buyout was in 97. Yeah. So it switched to 3rd edition in 2000. And 3rd edition, you were still on RPGA rules, but the buyout was in 2000. It was like earlier. So yeah, that's when they got owned by Wizards of the Coast. And then later, Wizards of the Coast got bought by Hasbro. So that's why they're now owned by Hasbro. That's been the way it's like transitioned. So 3rd edition D&D was out in 2000, changed a bunch of the rules. One thing that they did, there's a lot of things that they did when they made 3rd edition that makes it very different from 1st and 2nd edition. When I was talking earlier about, like, it's a little blurry 1st and 2nd edition, it's because some of the rules from 2nd edition you could probably port into 1st edition and vice versa, and it wouldn't, like, be weird to do that because they're kind of compatible for the most part. 2nd edition is obviously different, but it's compatible enough where it's sort of similar game. 3rd edition, they changed a couple of the big, long-standing rules in particular. One of the things they changed was there used to be this thing called THAC0, which everybody makes jokes about. And that is because in the original wargame version of D&D, armor classes went down rather than up. So you start at armor class 10 for an average character, unless you have like natural armor or something. And then you get armor, it goes down to 0. Yeah, so THAC0 stands for 2-hit armor class 0. And you'd have to look at a chart to convert whatever your roll was into your THAC0. So it's spelled THAC 0. Hit armor class 0. Like that. You can't tell it's a 0 in this font, but that's how it's spelled. Because it's 2-hit armor class 0. So that they had that in both 1st and 2nd edition. In 3rd edition, they flip it. So now it's roll the d20, add your modifier, and armor class goes up. Because it used to be armor class went down from 0. And that could be a little confusing, because if you had a really good armor class, you might have a -2 armor, right? Because it's possible to get better than 0, which means you'd have -2 or -3. So you're actually looking at the chart, and then you're looking, oh, I have to hit a -3 armor class, so I have to roll 3 extra. And I think one of the better decisions they made with 3rd edition was to flip that chart and just be like, why doesn't armor just start at 0 and go up? And then you add the number. It seems like it's crazy that for 15 years, they did it the other way. and not 15 years, 25 years, almost. If you think about the timing, because it started in like the mid-1970s. For 25 years, they did it the other way, where you had to look at this chart and go under a number. And they were like, wait a minute, why don't we just flip that? The rolling's the same, but the math is so much easier. Yeah, 26 years. They finally were like, we should fix that. Another thing that 3rd edition did differently was that it added a lot more non-combat skills to the game. So in 2nd edition, there was some like player options books where you could add non-combat skills to your characters. So you could have like a % chance to do blah, 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 blah. But in 3rd edition, they codified all that, and they made it so you had like a certain amount of skill points that you had to spend, and you have those skill points, and you spend those skill points on your class. That is very tricky to balance, and is one of the things that ultimately I don't think fucking works in 3rd edition. Because, and from here on, I'm going to use 3 and 3.5 pretty interchangeable, because 3.0 was a pretty short-lived edition. They only had that for 3 years before they revised it and did 3.5. And the reason, basically difference in 3.5 is that some of the classes, they changed a lot of the stuff about some of the classes work. The 3.0 is still kind of playable, but they made big shifts in like Bard and blah, 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 blah. So yeah. Yeah, non-weapon proficiencies, exactly. So non-weapon proficiencies, 3.5 was new when you started. 2003 is when 3.5 came out. Yeah, so 2nd ed ADHD, yeah, that's right. You know a lot about this too, Jason. You've been playing D&D as long as I have, I can tell. So when they made 3.0 and 3.5, they gave the rogue, like, stacks and stacks of non-combat skill points. So the rogue class is way outclassed in terms of, like, non-combat skills, because they wanted to have that feeling of, like, oh, you're really competent in a lot of things. You can pick locks, you can talk to people, you can be the face of the party, you can convince people, you can lie. All that stuff that rogues are supposed to do. Now, prior to 3.0, that class wasn't called Rogue, that class was called Thief. They changed it. Because they thought Rogue made, like, you know, oh, there's a charming rogue, as opposed to a thief, which, I don't know, has the connotation that you steal shit. They changed that. That's one of the changes they did. So they changed, like, the way that class works, but they also changed, like, what it's called. Thief's still a cooler name. I mean, originally, the oldest editions of D&D, it's not Halfling, it's Hobbit. And if you go back to the oldest editions of D&D, like, there's no races, right? Because the idea of race and class being separate, that was added in Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, and before Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, it was just, like, human. Everybody was human except for an elf. Yeah, so it was called Fighting Man. And, like, Magic User, or MU, wasn't called Wizard, it was just called Magic User. Yeah, and then they would level those classes up. And then every time, like, I had a comment earlier about, like, classes with names, because they used to have a separate name. So whenever you leveled up, you'd be like, oh, I've moved on from, like, Prestidigitator to Thaumaturge. Like, they would actually change your title name as you go up in classes. So you're like, I'm a fighting man. Oh, now I'm a gladiator. Oh, now I'm a warrior. Like, it goes out. Like, I don't remember, like, off the top of my head, but they would actually change, like, the name of your class so you'd be able to have this conversation in character. So instead of saying to somebody, like, oh, I'm a level 3 thief, you'd be like, oh, I'm a pickpocket. You know? And that was, like, the class name, right? Those class titles were silly but good. Well, it was like a way in character to talk about your class. So if you're like, oh, this guy's a bishop, that must mean he's a really high-level cleric. Right? So they had all these, like, class titles. Those kind of went by the wayside. They don't do those anymore, which is too bad, because they are kind of fun. Thaumaturge, yeah. So, like, Wizard wasn't called Wizard. It was called Magic User, or MU. And, like, they leveled up. You know, as you go. They were already gone by 2nd edition? Yeah. That was one of those things that my GM for 2E held over from 1E, because we had, like, the I'm gonna say this word, and this is just what the book is called, Oriental Adventures book, and he allowed some classes from that, and that was, like, the exotic Far East book where you could be, like, a samurai and stuff like that. That still had, like, the class names and stuff in it too. That was what it was called. Sorry, I know I'm gonna be like a little culturally insensitive in certain parts because I'm just talking about old D&D, and that's what the books were called. It's just what they called stuff. Yeah, OA was first ed. Yep, yeah, it was. So that was a first ed book, so we were allowed to use that, even though it was like a somewhat a second ed game. So it was like a mixy matchy kind of game. Yes, I'm not racist. I promise. It's just what the book is called. It's what the book is called. You could be a sailor. And so high, which was what their word for cleric was, but they were like spear using clerics. It was a whole thing. Oh my goodness. Yeah, so that was first and second edition. Hi Gales, how you doing? So I'm gonna go into this book next to me, which is the Tales from the Yawning Portal. And I'm gonna just talk my way through a little bit through some of the stuff that's in this book. Scrub Fiend is rated Party of 7. Scrub Fiend, good timing, because I haven't opened up the cam yet. 4th edition, best edition. I agree. I like 4th edition. I like 4th edition a lot.
Join me and together
Second
we can
Thieves and
end
Bars.
this
Yep.
destructive conflict and rule the galaxy as fanboy and
So in the modern day, we have this thing called the Old School Renaissance, or OSR, which is mostly people playing like 1st edition D&D. Kevin Spicy. Good call. I've got some 1st edition shit next to me as well. It's people playing like 1st edition and like advanced Dungeons and Dragons and like having a blast with it because it's old school. That's called the OSR. Rob, you're doing Forknork, right? Forknork, right? With Hatsune Miku advanced. Yes, it is advanced. It's advanced for advanced nerds. I was explaining what THACO is. You can see it's still on my board here. OSR is old school D&D with all the stupid shit cut out. Yeah, OSR is fun. Couldn't even talk with specific people in mass melees. Let's talk about 3.5 and why I don't like it. First of all, I'm gonna say that of all the D&D that I've played, I've probably played 3.5 the most. I have played a lot of D&D 3.5, so I'm qualified to speak about D&D 3.5. I have played it in tournament-based rules with pre-built module characters. I've played it in playtests for officially released modules. I've played it in several home games. I've run it only in small bursts. I've run like a couple dungeons in it, but mostly I played it a lot. And I have decided that I don't care for it very much after running 4th edition and 3.5. And 5th edition. There are some things that I think it did well. One of those things was getting rid of THACO, because even though THACO is very nostalgic for many old school gamers, it doesn't really make sense to count down when you could count up and roll the same thing on the die. It doesn't literally change the rules, it just makes it easier for players to count. Having some non-combat skills in the game, like players' options, the non-combat specialties, is good. And it's nice that they codified that in some way, because there's not everything that you do in D&D is combat. THACO just rolls with the tongue nicely. That's all I can say about it. Yeah, exactly. It's fun to say, you know? It's fun to say THACO, right? But I'm going to talk to you a little bit about this dirty word in D&D. I'm going to just put it on the board right here. Mastery. Which was a controversial design. I don't want to say controversial. Maybe I do. It's dirty words in design. All right, system mastery. Yeah, system mastery. The idea of being good at specifically not just the game itself, but building your character. So I want to give you a little historical perspective, which is that 3.5 is 2003. The internet back then was not the same as the internet today. The internet back then was mostly forums. So I've got RPG.net open in a tab. I'm not logged in. Let's just RPG.net open in a tab. rid of my chalkboard here for a second and bring up the pre-cooked tab that I have here. This is RPG.net. It's a still active old school internet forum. People are posting there to this day. This forum has been around for a very, very, very long time. And people post on here. They post play-by-posts. They post, what's a forum? Well, Atlas, a forum is where you post things very slowly in these things called threads. A lot of people were playing D&D this way. And by playing D&D, I mean they were building characters and doing theory crafting about what character it would be cool to play in theory, but not actually in practice. And I've been there since like 03. Pretty much like the height of it, like starting to post here is like in 03, right? So one of the things that's very fun to do in D&D 3.5 is to build a character from first principles all the way to like level 20 and talk about like the different ways you would make that character broken in theory to play, right? And that only got more fun as the game expanded because people were posting like, oh, they added this new player tactics book, so let's figure out how we can break the game using this. I'm going to build a character that's really, really good at stuff, that's really, really good at one thing. Most of those characters are not fun to play in practice because the skill system of D&D 3.5 limits you considerably to the point where if you specialize in doing just one thing very well, you can't do shit else. And if you've played D&D 3.5, I'm pretty sure you've had that experience. Because I know I did, and I got bored with the game every single time my character hit like level 10, because then I realized that I only could do one thing extremely well. So for example, I played a ranger all the way to like level 12. I was really good at shooting a lot of arrows. I had a lot of options. I had a pet raven. I had spells that I could theoretically cast. I had tons. I could dual hand weapons if I wanted, but it was optimal to just shoot as many arrows as I could every single round because it didn't put me in the front lines. It didn't put my character in danger, and I had a magic bow. So what I do every single round my turn came around, shoot 3 arrows. What am I doing next turn? Shooting 3 arrows. Do I want to get creative about it? No, that would be stupid. Because if I got creative about it, I'd put myself in danger and die. So a lot of times, now this is just my experience, but I've also like, I had a rogue in 3.5 that died in a bullshit dungeon. I had a dwarven fighter in 3.5 that wasn't all that interesting to play because martial characters just aren't interesting to play. And I know that first iteration of Ariat was a wizard in 3.5 and was way too squishy and like died really fast. But in general, it was like really fun to theory craft a broken build that could throw 16 magic missiles in one round. But then if you built that character, that was literally all you could fucking do. Anything else wasn't an effective thing to do. That's one of the reasons that I fell out of love with this game. Okay? Now, another thing that's really interesting about 3.5 and like 3rd edition in general is this is when they were experimenting with open source gaming. OSR, or open source rules, OSR. So, I don't go to play because I have no idea how it worked. You're just supposed to shoot magic missiles every single round, like 16 magic missiles. And just, I don't know, I guess you would kill everything if it didn't kill you first. You're just like the most glass of all cannons, I recall. The role player versus role player problem? Yeah, well, I mean, it's not even that. It's the game is not set up to do any fun role playing. It's set up to do like very specific. So what people really liked to do is they would like to go on this forum and they would post like their favorite builds that they came up with for what kind of cool character they would play in theory. And that's extremely fun to do in 3.5 because you have so many options to like build a character. But when you actually play the character, it's pretty easy to get bored with them and want to build a new character because like building the character is the fun part. If you don't enjoy the act of building a character and you don't enjoy like the system mastery part of obsessing over how to build the best character, Because I personally am one of those people that likes to kind of feel the character out and play. So I don't sit down and like chart, oh, this is exactly what I'm going to do with my build. I'd rather like just like think about it from a perspective of like, what's this character feeling like doing or going towards, you know? So, sorry, I'm looking at my notes here. 4th edition D&D came out in 2008. So there really wasn't that much time that we were in 3.5. If you think about like building characters in 4Ed is fun too. I mean, I wouldn't disagree, but I feel like the pushback that 4E got was because people were like, it's not fun to build characters in 4E. All the characters feel the same. Because one of the things that they did in 4E that was very different was they kind of made martial characters at even footing with casters, like in a way that they hadn't kind of been on before. Because they gave people like daily skills and abilities that allowed them to have like bursts of action that they could do like this cool thing like once a day, and then they had like other stuff that they could do like periodically. So even the playing field for like a lot of classes, like yeah, they added a bunch of stuff too. They added Dragonborns, which is like they didn't have that race before, but I think they just kind of thought, well, it's Dungeons and Dragons, right? So let's have some lizard people, let's have some dragon people in Dungeons and Dragons. Now, like Dragonlance had the Draconians, which is like a very similar race. Because they were kind of the same, like they were different, like they were different dragon types. It was similar, but they were kind of evil race. So they added this as a player race that was like the dragon people, so you could have like breath weapons as a player character, and that's like pretty cool. Warlords are great. I played a warlord once. I played a warlord in a campaign. It's really fun because warlord can heal by just yelling "rub some dirt on it." They have the "rub some dirt on it" ability where you can just say, rub some dirt on it, and then it heals people. You just like tell them to gut up. So basically, but it's a martial class that let you heal people, like with charisma. Like it's crazy like to have the stuff that they added. So like they also added some stuff like healing surges and action points that basically like let you have like surges of super heroics and let you do like stuff that made you more powerful than the average peasant. Because if you go back to the oldest editions of D&D and like some of the balances that, you know, it's a joke that a kitten can kill a first level wizard because a kitten can do like 1d6 with a claw and a wizard only has 4 hit points max. So like you'd counter a rabid kitten and then it could just knock you completely out. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, you're getting mechanical versus emergent play. Yeah, exactly. No, I'm with you. It very much played into the fact that HP is not blood in your body and is more abstract. Exactly. So healing surges are more like, I'm gonna put myself together, I'm gonna toughen up, I'm gonna think really hard about it, I'm gonna get strong, and I'm gonna go on the battlefield like renewed. Just from like the power of my friends. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I took 50 hit points of damage, so I'm missing an arm or whatever, you know? Yeah, shonen power, exactly. More abstract, which I think is kind of a good thing. They also simplified the non-combat mechanics, making them like a little bit less crunchy, like, oh, you don't have basket weaving? Well, I guess you can't weave a basket, which is how HP were described in second ed. Exactly. HP were described in second ed as being like, it's abstracted. It's an abstract idea of how healthy you are. It's not necessarily like one-for-one wounds to your body. That's the way we're described. But a lot of people don't play it that way, and just still to this day, like, didn't play it that way. And I think 4th edition really codified, like, no, you can, like, yell at somebody to cheer up, and they'll heal 6 hit points. You know, because it's an abstract idea. It's not, you're wounded, exactly, all the time. It can be, if that's how you're playing it, but it also cannot be. It also can be just, like, you're tired, you know? Or all of those blows that took hit points off of you were near misses, and they hit your armor, but you need to, like, take a step back and buff your armor again to repair it or whatever it is, you know? It was a lot more abstracted. 4th edition also, since they, at this point, were trying to sell product, right? In the earlier editions, it was more about selling the books. But once you've sold a book, what can you sell except more books? Which is, you know. So with 4th edition, what they really wanted to sell was miniatures. And they did make miniatures and a map very much a required part of the game. There's also card decks that you could buy that were like your powers in a card deck, which are actually super, super, super handy in 4th ed because sometimes it's hard to know, like, what powers do I have? If you had them all on those little cards, you could just easily whip them out and be like, oh, okay, this is my daily power. I'm going to use this now. Then I'm going to turn it over on the desk, was easy to keep track of. But I think the miniatures were like their biggest play because some of the miniatures were like pre-painted, pre-built, and they were kind of expensive. D&D 4th ed is really, really hard, pretty much impossible to run without the map. Because another change that they made was thinking about things with squares, like abstracted squares, instead of like it's a 5-foot move. They would just say like it's 2-square move. Squares are still 5 feet. They don't list your movement out. That way they list out squares. Yes, exactly. So Pontifex is saying the same thing I'm saying, which is they split it out squares. They made it so it's easier to like understand how far you can move because you're just like, oh, I can move 4 squares. Okay, that's how many squares I can move across the map. And yeah, they also made minis very interesting. So one of the things that they also did that was different was they added a lot more like environmental hazards and stuff like codified in the game. Like you can, like the game always has had traps ever since the 1st edition, but the traps are like, it made things cooldowns. Yeah. Which is exactly how it is because it lets you do stuff daily. It's very board game like, in way more board game like than any other edition, including 5th, because. That's okay. I'm all like every time people have a comment, I want to listen to it because I like want to hear your thoughts. So you don't have to shush. You can always talk back to me because this is not a classroom. Even though I have a classroom background because I'm a teacher and I'm doing a whole bit here, this is a stream. So feel free to chime in whenever you have. Especially like if you're like, oh no, you're wrong. There actually was a Dragonlance book in 1st edition. I didn't know that because like when I started playing, it was all 2nd edition Dragonlance books. But like I totally believe you, there was a setting book. I have the modules that I played. I can't remember if they were 1st edition or 2nd edition modules, because there was modules you could actually play as the heroes of Dragonlance. And those were the ones that like later were, or the same stories from the books. So, like you could go like into the forest and meet the Green Dragon, all that stuff. Like you could play through those. I did play through one of those. So I think the books came out first and then they made them into modules, but the Dragonlance novels were like originally their campaign that they ran and then they made them into a book basically. If you're from Board Games, oh, sorry, if it's a link, you can't, it's like, they're modded, but... If you're in the Discord, you can always post links there if you want, there's somebody you want me to check out, and I will translate them back to the stream. Just make sure you tag me so I see the message. Oh, no problem. The reason they're modded out, the reason that we don't allow them is just because, like, spammers show up and they're like, ooh, buy followers, and I'm like, I'm not interested in that bullshit. So we're kind of aggressive about getting rid of that crap, because I just don't want to deal with it. Where was I? Oh yeah, so they made it so you wanted to buy the board if you want to buy the pieces, right? Share in the RPG tabletop channel, because that's where I'm currently viewing right now. Refu RPG has most of them. Yeah, Refu RPG is a great resource. Pix Link is probably fine. Yeah, that too. Pix Vids is fine, or the tabletop is fine, either way. There we go. Dragonlance Adventures? Oh, is that the AD&D one? Okay, yeah, I have to check that out. Is that the one that I played? I don't think so. Yeah, that was 1987, so I definitely played the 2nd edition stuff and not the 1st edition stuff, but it's cool that there is a 1st edition one as well. That's sweet. I don't have that book. That's awesome. They're really, really fun stories. The actual books came out in, like, the 80s. And... then there was, like, also books, like, well into the 90s that, like, continued the adventures of that. They basically were, like, written by people who played through the game and had these OCs. Although my piece of trivia is that they actually started out with the Heart Quest books, which is a whole different stream. I'm going to do a Heart Quest book stream at some point. Well, we're actually going to read the Heart Quest books because they're super interesting. The Heart Quest books are Choose Your Own Adventure D&D books for girls. And I have 4 out of 6 of them. Well, technically there's 7 because there's a 0. But nobody has 0. it's unpublished, and I want it so bad. But we're gonna do it. We're gonna do a Heart Quest stream at some point, so we can actually choose your own Dungeons and Dragons romance adventure. And I will be like, we'll be choosing. I'll put it to the vote. Like we'll do it like a choose your own adventure. Yeah, they ran a campaign, took the ideas, and put it into the book. So that was like in those original setting books that they did. You don't see a lot of Dragonlance content today. And that's because I believe it's a rights situation, because most of the Dungeons & Dragons content for 5th edition is because WotC Hasbro has the rights to Forgotten Realms. And so they've started to use Forgotten Realms as the default Dungeons & Dragons setting. So in 4th edition, the setting is called Points of Light, and it's not really a setting. It's really just like draw a map, throw a dart, put a dungeon there, and then build your setting around like whatever else you want to do. And then you have a bunch of wilderness stuff, okay? Now keep in mind, there's only 5 years between 2003, when 3.5 came out. Let's talk about 5th Age Dragonlance. Nah, I'm not talking 5th Age Dragonlance. I'm not even going there. One of the challenges with running Dragonlance, like in a campaign, even though I love that setting personally, one of the big challenges is that it's very meta-plotty, because like the big important characters from the campaign are like doing big important things. So like either you have to go with the flow and be like, in my campaign, I'm just gonna change the canon of Dragonlance so that my PCs get to be important, or you have to keep track of what the Dragonlance FC's primary hero characters are doing and be like, oh, okay, you guys are in the Battle of Solemnia now. The really important characters are doing stuff, but you can also do stuff if you want, which to me is like not the ideal D&D experience. It feels like playing like World of Warcraft, where the more important characters are doing shit and your PCs kind of get to watch them do shit. Not a fan of that, but I like the setting a lot. So it's like those original adventures used the book characters as regions. They did, yeah. So in those original adventures, you like just played as Raceland and stuff. But if you're doing like a campaign with the player's original characters, you kind of don't do it that way. But like the modules that I went through, you just played as those characters. Raceland had a 17 int, which is weird to me. A 17? Really? Not an 18? Yeah, I'm a Raceland stan. That was a little weird. It was a wacky. I know, it was weird. I remember to this day because it was like, what? Really? Greatest fucking wizard ever? Not an 18? It was a different time. 18 was yeah, that was how it was. Having 18 was good. Yeah, exactly. It was a different time. It was different. Nowadays you pretty much like start out with like 2 18s. I don't know. Having 18 is like you're cheating, you're rude. How dare you have an 18? So when 4E came out, I want to say that it was pretty controversial. Because the people that really, really liked older editions of D&D, I'm talking 1st, 2nd, and to a lesser extent 3.5, this game is very different from those games in terms of how it's played. It's not as nitpicky, it's not as crunchy, it's more board gamey. The martial characters can do weird shit in it, like they can yell healing words at people even though they don't have magic. And this was not super popular. Now, to me, it's wild that this is only 2008. There was only 5 years between, 3.5, and everybody got really locked in and became, really stubborn about 3.5. And then they released this new version, and they're like, oh, we're never playing that. We're never playing that board game-ass shit. Because 5th edition of Dungeons & Dragons released in 2014 and has been around since 2014. So we have had 5th edition D&D now for 10 years, which is actually crazy. That's as long as the original editions lasted back in the day. And these other editions were boom, 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 because they came out with 2nd ed and they came out with 3rd ed. 3.5 was 3 years later. This was 4th edition was 5 years later. And then 5 years after that was 5th edition. So they were playtesting 5th edition for a long time before they released 5th edition. They lost you again with 5th ed? I mean, I get you, totally. I get why they would lose you. They were playtesting 5e way into 4e. Because there were so many complaints that this game was too different from the original D&D, they started playtesting 5e with original D&D modules, with 1st edition modules. Because they wanted to go back and make it more like a 1st E game. So 5e takes some stuff from 4, it takes some stuff from 3.5, but it takes a lot of stuff from 1. It takes a lot of stuff from Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. Because Spelljammer in Planescape? Yeah, exactly. You can do whatever you want in Planescape. Planescape is wild. Spelljammer was the other one I was thinking of earlier. I couldn't remember the D&D in space. D&D in space. That was also wild. It was also fun. I was in a Spelljammer campaign. It was 3-5. It was a 3-5 Spelljammer. Remember when D&D Now was going to be compatible? Yeah, they used to call it D&D Now. They called it D&D Now before... Oh, yeah, Beard has a good point. The 4E was supposed to be the first fully digital version of D&D, but a lot of shit fell through with that. I didn't know somebody literally died. Doesn't surprise me, because that technology is like that sometimes. They call it the bus factor. If somebody gets hit by a bus and doesn't know the password. There was a lot of turmoil, like, when they were trying to figure out how to bring D&D to the internet, because, again, remember, this was 2008. The internet wasn't the way it is now. The internet was different in 2008. But they wanted to have it be, like, an all-online edition. Oh, by the way, we're going to go to commercial break, if you're not subbed to the channel, so just hang tight. We're going to go to ads in, like, 3 minutes. Yeah, or 3 minutes. I think I'm going to stop making prepared remarks for the next 3 minutes so that everybody can catch up. But why don't I get my camera back on real quick? There's a couple other things I want to talk about. One of the things I want to talk about is this this book right here that I have next to me, the Yawning Portal. This is a 5th edition book. So when I playtested, thank you, Stone. You don't have to do that every time we go to ads. We have to run them, or else I get the pre-reel, and I hate the pre-reel so much. I just hate it so much. When I playtested 5th edition, which, yes, I was in the playtest for 5th edition, a lot of people were, because a lot of us were playing D&D back then. Anybody who was serious about D&D probably had access to the playtest. So I was in 2 playtests for 5th edition. The first one was using, I want to say, Keep on the Borderlands, which is an old module for D&D. And the second one was using this motherfucker. Expedition to Barrier Peaks, which I still have a copy of, which we'll go through in a little bit. YouTube Premium for the win? Exactly. Well, YouTube won't have ads, so if you're ever, like, colors on that book, that's Expedition to Barrier Peaks, baby. I was in a game of this during the 5th edition playtest before 5th edition was officially released. At Origins, as a matter of fact. So I did manage to get a copy of this particular module, and this module is really fucking fun and crazy. So 2 of the modules I'm going to talk about are Barrier Peaks. I'm going to talk about the Tomb of Horrors as well. Should I start with this, or should I start with the Yawning Portal? What do you guys think? Yap. Well, yeah, I mean, that's what we're here for, right? You're here to hear my fucking gaming opinions. Oh, there's something else I want to bring up, too. Let's talk about one of the designers of, Where is the... Oh, you know what? Actually, I took a screen cap of this because it was really hard to find. Did you never got to play it? 4th edition? Yeah. I went the Internet Archive delving today because I could not find the original page of this on it anymore, and I had to, like, get a screen cap of it from the Internet Archive. You're gonna see some shit from the Internet Archive on this stream because I went digging in the Internet Archive to find some of the stuff that I was thinking about. Did I save it? Did I save it? Where did I save it? All right, well, it's good that we're in ads anyway, because now I'm going to see the file that I saved. It was in here. Publish date order? It's okay, we're still in ads. Green chest, is it? No, but I bet you... That's just... Am I gonna have to, like... Oh. That folder's empty? It was something I found on Reddit. It's, Monty Cook talking about... I may have to just Google it again real quick. The design qualities of D&D. Yeah. I found it. I found it. I'm gonna bring it up on... Ads are over, so we're back. We're talking about Monty Cook's White Tower for a little bit. I'm a bit of a hater of this philosophy, which is why I'm talking about it. Remember when I was talking earlier about system mastery? This is him talking about some of the design goals for D&D 3.5. Now, I don't know Monty personally. I mean, I have met him. I've met a lot of these people. But I don't like know, I don't like, you know, we don't hang or anything, right? Beard has got the, it sucks. This shit sucks, bro. When they were designing 3.5 and 3rd edition, they were thinking a lot about this concept of system mastery. So I'm gonna talk a little about this because it might be kind of small on your screen. It's kind of hard to zoom in on because. So it says, we did take some cues from Magic. For example, Magic uses template integrated effect. Remember, this is D&D 3.5, and now D&D does too. To be clear in this instance, I don't mean templates like Half Dragon so much as I mean templating categories such as fire spells and cold using creatures. Magic also has a concept of Timmy cards. These are cards that look cool, but aren't actually that great in the game. The purpose of such cards is to reward people for really mastering the game and making players feel smart when they figured out that one card is better than the other. While D&D doesn't exactly do that, it's true that certain game choices are deliberately better from the others. Now, first of all, that's not what Timmy card means. Timmy card doesn't mean deliberately bad card. That's not what it fucking means, Monty. I have another essay that explains what it actually means, which I will go to after we get done with this one. But just know that, like, part of his philosophy, part of his idea was to include stuff in the game that was deliberately bad so that you would feel smart for not picking it. Which I hate! I hate that shit. Now, I get it that, like, certain things in the game are better than other things. Yes, I hate this. Let's make our game experience because of, yeah, right? Exactly. No. Toughness, for example, has its uses, but in most cases, it's not the best choice of feat. You can use martial weapons, a longsword is just better than many other one-handed weapons, and so on. There are far more intricate examples. Arguably, this kind of thing has always existed in D&D. Mostly, we made sure that we didn't want to design it away. We wanted to reward mastery of the game. So what does this mean? This means, effectively, that you're an idiot for not picking the right thing. You may as well fucking pick longsword, because everything else is not as good as longsword. And we didn't balance it around, like, giving you options. We balanced it around you being smart enough to figure out what the best thing was to pick, and then picking that thing. So people were like, oh, but it gives you, like, so many options during character gen. Does it really? Does it really? When they designed it this way? Come on! Hello! Welcome! Good timing. You're arriving during my my 10 minutes hate on Monty Cook. I'm doing a 10 minutes hate right now on Monty Cook. What were you playing? You beat a bad game? What bad game was it? Oh my god, I almost did a spit take. You beat Booger Man? That's fucked up. I know that game. Oh my god, I shouldn't have taken a big sip of my drink before I asked you about what game you were playing. Gross. Well, welcome everybody. We're talking about Monty Cook the Dirty Crook. Holy shit. We're gonna get some haters in this chat. Listen, I'm with you. Earthworm Jim had a good cartoon. Earthworm Jim had a good show. It taught me the litany against fear from Dune, which I originally thought was the litany from Earthworm Jim. Time Hater Society. I'll sell TSR to make him D&D. Yes. So, there's a third concept we took from Magic-style rules. With only 6 years of hindsight, I call this concept Ivory Tower game design. This is the approach we took in 3rd edition. Basically just laying out the rules without a lot of advice or help. The strategy relates tangentially to the second point above. The idea is the game just gives the rules. Players figure out the ins and outs for themselves. Players are rewarded for achieving mastery of the rule, making good choices rather than poor ones. Perhaps it's obvious from the name of coin from this rules writing style, I no longer think that this is a good idea. So even though we're kind of hating on this guy a little bit, even he thinks this was a bad idea. Even he thinks this was stupid. He regrets this bullshit. He writes a great adventure. Honestly, this is another thing that I'm going to say that's really controversial. Maybe. I don't know. Book of Eternal Darkness. Or Book of Vile Darkness. Right? Look at the Book of Vile, the one he wrote. There's a second book. There's a companion piece that's like the Book of Ascension Goodness or whatever. But like the Book of Vile Darkness was just like edgelord shit. Like, it was like, ooh, sorry, but I'm gonna just say this, like, ooh, magic cock rings, magic nipple piercings. Like, completely like, Book of Exalted Deeds, that was the good guy version, yeah. Which nobody cared about. Everybody wanted that Book of Vile Darkness. It's just, it's full of edgelord shit, right? But I like the second half of the book. Because the second half of the book is just a body cook-ass adventure set in hell. And I would run the shit out of an adventure set in hell. Where you had to, like, get the different demons to, like, do politics against each other, and, like, they all had different agendas, and they were on, like, different layers, and it was, like, the 9 layers of the 9 hells. I would run that setting. I would. But the actual first half of the book is cringe garbage. The book is worth it for the second half, though. Like, it's a good book in the second half because the setting is good. Like, the setting is awesome. I said Book of Eternal Darkness. That's a different book. That's a Pargon. Julioff. So I no longer think this is entirely a good idea. I was reading a passage from a recent book and I found it rather obtuse. But it wasn't the writer's fault. He was just following the lead the core books offered him. Nevertheless, the whole thing would have been much better if the writer had just broken through the barrier of this kind of design setups between designer and player and just told the reader what the heck he was talking about. I agree. You were wrong to do the thing you did before, and you're right to say this thing. To continue with the simplistic thing above, the toughness feat could be written to make it clear that it was for first level elf wizards, where it is likely to give them a 100% increase in hit points. It's also handy when you know you're playing a one-slot session with first level characters, like at a convention. You don't want to take item creation feats in such an instance, for example. Ivory Tower game design requires a two-step process on behalf of the reader. You read the rule, and then you think about how it fits in with the rest of the game. There's a moment of understanding, and then a moment of comprehension. That's not a terrible thing, but neither is just providing the reader with both steps at least some of the time. So, he's talking a little bit about, like, the early design philosophy of 3.5, although he's wrong about what a tinny card is, which I'll get into in a second. But he, says, like, maybe it would have been better to actually, like, help people out a little bit more. Right. It's a bad idea to use MZC. I didn't realize it existed, but I understand what happens in D&D now. Yes, see, I'm giving you the history of why these design choices are the way they are. Because one of the reasons this is like this is because they were trying to make it more like Magic, and they were trying to make it more like Magic because it was a cultural thing, and they wanted players to, like, play with it on the then slow internet, where you did a lot of posting, but you weren't playing live on the internet the way you do today. Because it was very hard to have the high-speed conversation that we're having now back in 2003's internet. Quick writes a great hell adventure, the all-time paladin hell. Yeah. Greenwood is great. He's funny as shit. Yeah, so that's what that is about. Now, when I say he's wrong about Timmy cards, here's what a Timmy card actually is. And this is from 2013. Timmy, this is basically if you are in any kind of software design, game design, user interface design, you're doing what they call personas. And a persona is a concept in design where you think about what the end user is going to want in your design. See, I'm a fucking teacher and I work in tech, so I'm telling you stuff like this is your gold right here, okay? This is gold, okay? So you come up with a persona of like what kind of end user would be using this product. So you're thinking like, this person wants this out of this, so we're going to design for this user. This person wants this out of this, so we're going to add for this user. And what happens a lot is they give the user, like, these little fun names to remember who they are. So in Magic the Gathering, they had 3 personas that they designed for. Timmy, Johnny, and Spike. With me so far? So Timmy happened by accident We're talking about whether or not Verdant Force was popular. I started one of my little speeches. Incidentally, I'm not 100% sure why I chose the name Timmy. I wanted to personify this kid and give him a name Timmy. Had this innocent kid-like quality to him that struck my fancy. Imagine a kid goes into a game store, let's call him Timmy. Timmy doesn't have a lot of money, so he buys one pack of Bogavati, which is the Tempest at the time. He rips it open and starts tearing through the cards to find the rare. And then he sees it. It's a big green creature. 7 power, 7 toughness. It's huge. It's huge. His eyes glance up at the casting cost. Blah, blah, blah. Timmy looks at the rule text. There's a bunch of words. Timmy reads. Every turn, Timmy gets another creature. It's small, but in 10 turns, he'll have a 20 creatures. A 7/7 with 21 ones. It can't be stopped. Timmy finally exhales. For some reason, the name Timmy stuck. So Timmy... There's a card in Magic the Gathering Unclued that's literally called Timmy Power Gamer. It's like the Forge. Yeah, I used to post on the Forge like all the time, and I actually like went to Forge Midwest Con more than once. So like, forgive me if I'm like way in the weeds about this tabletop game design stuff, because I am. So I'm trying to keep it like you understand what I'm talking about, right? So Monty Cook is not entirely correct what a Timmy card is about. A Timmy card isn't deliberately bad. It's just flashy. There's a card called Timmy Power Gamer, which is in Unglued, which is the joke on Timmy. Kevin Spicey sold all my Magic cards for me, and I spent that money at the Ren Fair on different bullshit, and mostly booze. But I I used to play Magic. And the only time I ever won a Magic tournament, the prize was a box of Unglued cards. So I had a shitload of Unglued cards, which are not usually tournament legal, but there's no microtransactions. Listen, I play gacha. I'll play a little gacha. I'm excited for yeah, shout out Kevin Spicey. Thank you so much, Kevin Spicey, for helping me liquidate the Magic cards. I don't play anymore, but I did used to play. So I basically, like, the only time I ever won a tournament, which was like a pickup tournament at a local Comic-Con type thing, was a really small tournament, but the prize that I won was a box of Unglued cards, so I had a shitload of Unglued. And most of the Unglued cards are not tournament legal, except for the lands, because they're just lands, and they're really pretty. So those are the ones that were, like, really high prized at the time, right? But I did have Timmy Power Gamer. Timmy Power Gamer was a card you have, and it's based on this persona of Timmy. Timmy likes to win big. He doesn't want to get a last-minute victory. He wants to smash his opponents. He likes his cards to be impressive, and he enjoys playing big creatures and big spells. So, like, a Timmy card isn't a deliberately bad card. It's just a loud, flashy card, and I would say that I was primarily a Timmy player. Like, I liked big creatures. I played red-green. I played no-brains red-green when I went to tournaments. All right? No thoughts, head empty, fireball, 7/7 creatures. All right? So I get Timmy. He makes sense to me. Don't shit on Timmy, man. And just to, like, wrap this up, Johnny was the creative gamer, to which magic is a form of self-expression. He wants to win with style, and he wants to do it creatively. He likes a challenge. Johnny enjoys winning with cards that no one else wants to use. He likes making decks that win in innovative ways. He likes deck building as much as he enjoys playing. See, I'm not that person. Cookie not getting the beauty of Timmy's his great weakness. Yeah, exactly. Timmy isn't a bad gamer. Timmy just wants to do flashy, exciting shit. Right? Like, toughness isn't a Timmy feat. Like, that's silly. Timmy would just play a wizard and cast a bunch of fireballs. Yeah, right? And then they talk about Spike, which is the only name I didn't come up with. None of R&D did. They called him Timmy, Johnny, and the tournament player. But for some reason, we knew they wanted to give him a name, so they named Spike. Spike sounded like a serious, say this as soon as possible. Yeah. Yeah, so you're more of a Johnny, right? Like, you want a convoluted, stupid combo, right? You hate wizards and spells? I know. You. I played mostly martial characters when I played D&D. Like, I played a warlord. I played a ranger for a super long time. I played a rogue. I played another rogue. I did play a cleric in Spelljammer. I played a a gnome cleric. Yeah, in Spelljammer. And I would do that again. It's kind of fun to be like a small angry healer. That was kind of fun. I would do that again. Warlord, base. I love Warlord. Warlord is such a fun class. I think we can all agree that Warlord is based and fun. Some best character. Yeah. She was like a tinkerer and she was a healer. She was like kind of small and mad. Yeah, she was really fun to play. That was a fun character. Every once in a while, it's just fun to play a halfling or a gnome and just like be a little yeah. And then then I was a dwarven fighter. I had a dwarven fighter in 3.5. You know, I played a lot of martial characters. I do really like paladin because it's like martial, but there's a little bit of magic involved. That's the same reason I gravitated toward ranger. Like there's a little bit of magic there, but I like the bow and arrow. I like to be Legolas, you know. So I get you. But I don't have anything against wizards. It's just like one of the reasons I like 4E is that it's balanced around all the classes like being playable, and the wizard like not necessarily outclassing other classes immediately, because you can do heals with warlord and shit like that. Old person, big barbarian failed. If we get into individual game stories though, like that's a whole other stream. But yeah, so that's the difference between like system mastery in 3.5 as Ivory Tower game design defines it versus what Timmy actually means as a player, which is not like, Timmy's not a bad player. Timmy just likes it when things are loud and flashy. Like Timmy would play an illusionist or a wizard and like do big damage with their giant fireballs and lightning bolts, because Timmy would think that's rad, you know? It's not that he's bad at the game, he just likes it when stuff is big and explosive and flashy. Whereas, like, maybe Johnny here is the guy playing, like, a bard and coming up with, like, weird-ass ways to make the bard spells interact with, you know, just, like, off the top of my head, like, coming up with, like, weird spell interactions. So Timmy's playing a wizard. Timmy is like, I cast lightning bolt, I cast chain lightning, I cast fireball. And if Johnny is playing a wizard, he's like, ooh, I cast mirror image, and then I cast control. You know, they're casting like these utility spells, right? It's different. It's just different. It's a different like design philosophy. It's not necessarily one player is bad at the game, one player is good at the game. That's one of the things that I feel is like a misunderstanding of design that ended up in 3.5, and like why there's actually bad design like baked into 3.5, which in later editions maybe not so much. Now, I think in 5th edition, one of the things that they were trying to do was the big compromise between how do we make 4th edition players who are used to crazy bullshit happening happy, and how do we make 3.5 players that want the game to be kind of fucking crunchy and groggy happy, all while ignoring the fact that D&D is a batshit game for crazy people, okay? Which brings me to, let's look at some old modules, and then let's look at the Yawning Portal. Because I feel like looking at the old modules is going to be very fucking illustrative, okay? So I'm going to start... Why don't we just start with this one, actually? This is the Tuba Horrors. I have a lot to say about this module. This module was released in 1975 for the Origins Gaming Convention. This is a 1981 print of it. But it's the same module, okay? This module has been re-released for 5th edition in the Yawning Portal, so it's a really interesting one to look at from like the different contrasts between like the reversion. But I will say it's a fairly accurate translation, except for the fact that the illustrations are wrong. So let's just look at the game itself, at how it's written. So this was written by Gary Gygax, and he has a particular style of GMing, which is very, I'm going to say adversarial, right? This module is extremely like, screw you. Now I want everybody to cover this. This module was originally used for the official Advanced Dungeons & Dragons tournament at Origins 1. There's a little bit about this module. There's a little bit about that tournament in this book, because this book that I have here does talk about D&D up through 1975. And 1975 was when this module was originally used was originally used at Origins. Now, you notice this printing is later because it was revised after Origins. This is the version we're looking at, but it was originally used at Origins in a tournament. So if you're not familiar with Origins was obviously probably a lot smaller back then. I've gone to Origins a lot, so I'm pretty familiar with how it is now, which is, it's a convention, right? People get together, they play, it's the same age as you. Yeah, guys worked for a specific, well, it's not just for his specific table, it was for a convention. So people way smaller, for sure. Way smaller than it is today. But it was for, like, a gathering of players to play in a tournament-style game. So what people did in this module was this wasn't your home campaign. This wasn't like, this is the culmination of all the adventures we've done so far. And the story is led up to this. This is not how this is meant to be approached. And the problem with that is that this is like a level 10 to 14 module. So if you want to use this as like the culmination of a campaign where that has lasted like the X of 10 levels and like has a story, do not do that, because that is not what this is for. This module is specifically designed to screw you over. Yes, it's like a roguelike type board game. You're supposed to come to this with your character. Your character might get chewed up and spat out by this thing, because this thing is mean. This is not storytelling. This is very much board gaming. This is very much like tournament board gaming. So this is what it looks like to go on the Tomb of Horrors. Look, first of all, look at this picture. Just gaze at this picture. This is what the entrance to the Tomb of Horrors looks like. Great big fucking smiley face. Happy. He's a happy guy. Tomb of Horrors, you don't need to read all of this, but I want to point out some highlights, which is that it has 2 false entrances. And then it has a correct entrance. It has very few monsters in it because it's mostly trap-based and goof-based. And the traps are very much like goofy pranks, which is one of the reasons I think this module fucking owns. It wouldn't be fun. A lot of people try to recreate, like, oh, I'm going to create a module that's just like the Tomb of Horrors. But what do they forget about is that this module is funny. This module is funny as shit. Like, it's mean, but it's mostly goofs and jokes that they play on the player, and it's, like, rude, and it's trolling you. Like, it wouldn't be fun to go through this, but doing this module is like playing I Wanna Be the Guy. Goofy pranks, like, there's 3 different ways to get teleported without your clothes, and all your clothes and armor and weapons get teleported to the treasure hoard of the boss. There's multiple ways for that to happen in the Tomb of Horrors. This is an archway where you walk through the archway and it flips your alignments and your gender. These vivid orange mists cannot be penetrated with any vision or magic. The skeleton misleads the party. For any character passing through the portal will enter a 10 by 10 room where their sex and alignment are reversed by a terrible curse. The curse, once removed, will not alter paladin, hood, ranger status, etc. Re-entering the archway will restore original alignment, but 1d6 points of damage will be sustained. Going back a 3rd time will reverse your sex. The individual will be teleported to Arch 10. Only a wish or alter reality will restore both at the same time. If alignment is restored by entering the orange portal or removed, curse portal will then restore original sex. I don't know, it's just weird. It's just a weird, oh no, I'm a woman now, a terrible curse. Right? Oh no. Oh no. Oh darn. Don't get me started on Ready Player One, I'll be here all night. I mean, I'm gonna be here all night anyway, but Ready Player One's a whole other can of worms, my friend. You don't want to open the Ready Player One can with me. I hate Ready Player One. Fucking hate it. I feel like if Klein hadn't actually read The Tomb of Horrors, it wouldn't. I mean, I don't know, dude. I don't know. There's another thing that I want to point out. Oh, as a private joke, and they never, like, I mean, they don't explain what the joke is, but I'm just gonna say, Adversarial, that's the guy who runs the Tomb of Horrors. I feel like Adversarial is one of my favorite D&D villains of all time, and it's just environmental storytelling. Like, he's the dude who designed this dungeon, and this might be extrapolating for me because, you know, this is like a little auteur theory here, but as the guy who designed this dungeon, he is Gary Gygax, right? Like, like Gary Gygax's self-insertion character is a Sararak who designed this troll-ass dungeon. And Ariat and I were joking that we bought the house that we live in from a Sararak because we're currently having renovations done. The whole fucking front of the mansion right now is a complete mess because they're repainting it. But we're repainting it in, like, normal colors because this whole place was painted in, like, green and pink and blue. Like, it was so fucking pastel. It's just not my vibe, man. I'm a vampire here. We need to redesign this place. But the Tomb of Horrors is fucking colorful. And that's the one thing that most illustrations and most depictions of the Tomb of Horrors get wrong. In fact, when I show you the map in the Yawning Portal, it's wrong. Like, the way that it's colored is wrong. Because I call the Tomb of Horrors, I always call it a Sararak's Big Gay Ice Cream Parlor. And I don't call it that to, like, pick fun of, like, the idea of being gay. I call it that because Big Gay Ice Cream is a real place where you can go, and this is what it looks like. And this is what the Tomb of Horrors looks like! This is what it looks like! It's rainbow colors everywhere because most of the puzzles in the Tomb of Horrors are color-coded. And, like, you have to push buttons of different colors, like, go through. So everything is painted, like, bright colors and pastels in the Tomb of Horrors if you actually read the way it's written. It's not spooky in there. It's wacky! These tapestries appear to feature weed-grown rocks and green and golden tan scenes of undersea life, specifically anti-magic treated creations of green slime and mold. If they are torn, they instantly turn to green slime and cover every player standing before them in green slime. Rad. Let me talk about my favorite room in the Tomb of Horrors. The Pillar Room. There are scores of massive columns in the Tomb's chamber. Each of these 3-inch diameter pillars radiates magic. Any creature who touches a pillar with or without intent will uncontrollably float upwards until she or she bounces gently on the ceiling like a child's helium balloon. To stop this, like to dispel magic or remove curse, there seems to be a gentle breeze in the room. Any creature floating amongst the many-hued columns, rainbow-ass shit, will begin drifting northwards and northwestwards towards locations A or B. By the way, if you go into location A, you're going to go through this incredibly famous trap. I'm going to find you because I have a t-shirt with this on it. This guy right here. It's Willy Wonka! It's Willy Wonka! Let me get out of the way so you can see him. You've seen this guy before. I literally was just wearing the t-shirt with this on it, actually. I just took it off, threw it in the wash because I had to wear a work shirt today earlier. This guy right here. There's multiple of these in the dungeon. And the one you initially encounter is the Sphere of Annihilation. So you go into the... If you try to enter this, you get disintegrated. But the one in the Willy Wonka room where you float up to the sky does not do that. It throws you into the mouth and spits you out, quote-unquote, of the one where you get disintegrated. So if you float through that in the Willy Wonka room, fly through the opposite side, get spat out, you might have the brainwave of like, oh, did I get spat out of this room? Why don't I just jump back in and go back to where I was? And then you get disintegrated because it's the Sphere of Annihilation. I'll just come back, right? Yes! Fucking, oh, it's so sadistic, dude. It's so mean. I mean, obviously do not run this, like, as the culmination of a campaign, but as a one-shot, it's fucking funny. And just have extra characters. So I designed a dungeon similar to this that had, like, bullshit traps like this, and it was funny as shit, but I just gave the players extra lives. so they could just die and then come back. So they could just experiment with stupid shit like, oh, what happens if I take a book off this bookshelf? Is that a you know, secret room? No, actually the entire bookshelf falls on you. You take, you know, 2d8 damage. Oh, this is a magic ring. Like, I had a magic ring that if you put it on your finger just falls off, and that was it. It was just bullshit like that, because it's just like, that's just funny to me. But like, just give people extra lives so they can get through the dungeon, because they're gonna die. Yeah, just bring your spares, like, bring your spare character. Like, if you've ever seen, like, in first edition D&D, or like later editions, because they kept adding this, there's something called Big B's Crushing Hand. It's in the fucking movie, right? Well, Big B was just one character. Every time one of those guys died, the player would just field his next cousin. So it was Big B, and Rigby, and Digby. Right? People just had backup characters back then, and they didn't put effort into the backup characters because they knew they were gonna explode it anyway. Yeah, it's just bullshit. It's just stupid, crazy, like, trolling stuff. And if you go into that with that attitude, then it's very funny. But if you're not in there with that attitude, then you're gonna be pissed because you're gonna die in the cheapest, rudest possible ways. MELF stands for male elf. Yeah, I did know that. MELF's acid arrow. It's just male elf. Melf the elf. Yeah, it's dumb. And then there's another part of the Tomb of Horrors where the stairs are all colored. So here's the original map. They show it here. This is the original map. This is that room with all the pillars that I was talking about. And these stairs are all rainbow colors too. So if I go back to spot 25 in here. Silver Throne. Contrasting with the pastel colors of the floor and pillars of the hall is the stark blackness upon which rests an obsidian throne. So the pillars are colored, the hall is colored, the throne is black. So it's like all these random, like, beautiful colors throughout the Tomb of Horrors. So, like, don't let anybody ever, like, tell you the Tomb of Horrors is not. It's supposed to be beautiful. Small room with a door of electric blue. This door shimmers with a faint blue light when observed from within 10 feet. The door is touched, this gleaming glows bright. A brass bowl peg is to be used. All these things are brightly colored. Portal of scintillating violet. Glowed faintly from a distance, shines a bright and coruscating purple with tinges of green. The door is pulled open, the character a bare chamber. All these things are really, really, really colorful. Which you won't see. Like, I'm going to show you the illustration. Why they printed in blue and white? No, why did they print in blue and white? They couldn't photocopy it. They couldn't photocopy it. I just realized. Xerox. Yep, that was it. Yep. Okay, yep. It occurred to me a second later. Because artists also draw, like old school artists draw in blue. So you can do your line art in black, and then when you run it through the Xerox machine, it only photocopies the black. So, like, all the old art from, like 101 Dalmatians and shit like that, like, you could see, like, they used to Xerox the final line art. So the underneath line art is blue. Yeah, okay. It clicked for me the second you said that. I was like, oh, yeah, so you can't photocopy it. Because this wouldn't show up on a Xerox machine. Yeah, rotoscoping. The reason I said 101 Dalmatians is that was the first Xeroxed Disney production. But, like, I have animation cells and drawings and original drawings, and the underdrawing is blue and then the overdrawing is white because the blue doesn't photocopy. Yeah, I'm still telling you, man. You come to these streams, you get more than you bargained for. Thank you, Kuma, for reminding me that was the... Yeah, I realized that a second later after you said that. Yeah, it's gotta be the reason. And then there's actually, like, the fight with the Sararak in here at the very end. Most of this is illustrations, though. And, like, the reprint of this is sadly missing some of these illustrations. And these illustrations are so much fun. Like, the first hallway of this place looks like this. It's so colorful. It's full of, like, there's, like, a cage with the guy in there. But it's covered in all these crazy murals. And, like, the floor is just mosaic. Like, it seriously is some Willy Wonka shit. And this is the archway. There's a couple different archways, and they all have different colored mists in them. Like, if the one that, like, changes your gender or whatever, you walk through that, that's the archway. Like, this is, like, one of the different murals they have on the wall in here. Cursed Zillow. Cursed Zillow, a Sararak's dungeon. I mean, I would run this, but just know that it's, like, totally trollish. I think most people know, like, most of the goofs in this by now, because there's just a lot of goofs, but, yeah. People that are trying to, like, recapture the magic of a of a deadly D&D dungeon that will totally kill you. Forget that this is supposed to be stupid. Like, it's hilarious. It's dumb. Like, I wasn't there when they ran this in Origins the first time. I mean, obviously it was mean-spirited in a lot of ways. But there's a certain, like, wacky comedy to this that I feel is, like, missing from people trying to recreate it because they're, like, they're too serious about it. Whereas this is just purely weird and batshit. So that brings me to the Acquisition of Barrier Peaks. I actually have that one hard copy, so I'm just going to open it up on cam here. This is another troll-ass D&D module. So they actually ran this as part of the playtest for 5th edition. What's cool about this copy is that it's got the full color illustrations, so you can see like the colors and everything that they did here. And this is some troll shit. Now this is a super. Oh, that's the original D&Ds and yeah. I'm gonna show D&Ds and demigods later. I do have the original deities and demigods here, the 1980 printing. Really, really cool book. So we'll go over that as well. I'm not doing that just to brag. I'm just talking to you about old D&D because I want to talk about old D&D because when I talk about 3.5 again, you're going to see a big contrast between this style of design and the 3.5 style of design. And when people say like 3.5 is more accurate to the old school D&D, no, it isn't, because old school D&D was weird. Old school D&D is funny. It's full of jokes. Is the only thing like it. Yeah, there's nothing like this. So, if you're not familiar with Expedition to Barrier Peaks, the hook of Expedition to Barrier Peaks is that it's a crashed alien spaceship. Basically, they say, like, hey, this weird facility is up on this mountain, and you're gonna go to this mountain, and you're gonna explore. And then when you get inside, it's a Star Trek-ass alien spaceship. And this was what, look at the cover, 1980. 1980. So this is like pre-next gen, right? That's like Star Wars, Star Trek are like the primary things, like old school Star Trek is like the primary like thing that inspired like Battlestar, all that shit, you know? So they have these like teleporters and stuff. But one of the things that's very, very trolly in Barrier Peaks is that things are not what they seem like they would be. So I'm gonna flip through this real quick and show you like some of the illustrations in this because it's really, really funny. There's robots that you have to fight. There's dead people. I wanna find the phaser. So say you find items like this, right? These are weird items that you find. These are objects. They make you try and figure out what these objects do. And they don't explain to you. So like say you pick this thing up and you don't know what it does. And you just have to play with it because the only rules on how to interact with this are just like fuck around with it until you figure out what it does. And a lot of this stuff will kill you. Like some of this stuff is like laser guns and stuff that will actually blow you up. And stuff that looks like guns aren't guns. Like some stuff that looks like guns is for healing, and stuff that looks like healing is guns. There are key cards with clearance levels, so there's different colored key cards, which I don't have any confirmation on this, but I think Doom stole this. Because the Doom guys used to like play D&D, right? So the key cards have different colors, and like different colors give you like different security levels. Yeah, there's a robot that performs unnecessary surgery on you. There's these different robots, and then one of my favorite stupid monsters of all time is in this. The Stomp Bunny. Let me find him real quick. Wolf in Sheep's Clothing is the official name. I just call him the Stomp Bunny. Where is the Stomp Bunny? He's in here somewhere. There he is. Oh, what a cutie! Get him on still camera. Look at it! Look at his little bunny! Sits on the stomp! And then this stump is the actual monster. Monster eats you. It's so dumb. I just love this stupid crap. It's so funny. It's so funny, dude. This is kind of falling apart because this is a very old book. This is an old book. But yeah. You're using that definitely. Holy shit! Have you never seen this wolf in shoe clothing before? Oh yeah, he's look at him, look at his little ass. Here he is, calm and peaceful in the little forest. You find him in the forest. There's like a little garden, like a little greenhouse inside the alien ship. The habitat. There you go. That's what I'm looking for. It's like a little nature habitat. You're like, oh, there's like a little nature habitat in here. Oh, there's like these weird plants. Oh, what's this cute little bunny? I'm gonna approach this little bunny. This stump is gonna kill you. It's gonna get you. Yeah, the bunny was just a lure. It's like an anglerfish. Yeah, it's so good, dude. And like, look at all these alien plants that will eat and kill you too. I mean, I think we can all agree that plants are some of the worst fucking D&D monsters to deal with. Like, plants that kill you suck so much. There's so many of them in this module. And then there's like some really, really nice, like, cool illustrations in the module. So yeah, definitely steal the Wolf in Sheep's Clothing. It's absolutely awesome monster. And very mean, very stupid, very rude. That's what this module was actually run as 3.5 as 5th edition playtest, because they wanted to see like if the old modules could run with 5th edition, because the 5th edition modules are kind of hodgepodge. They're kind of from every edition. They kind of take bits and pieces from all the different editions of. So yes, that is the original D&D Deities and Demigods. This is a first printing, and I forget where I got this. I think I did get it from a used bookstore because it is secondhand. But just to give you another idea of like what 80s D&D was like, old school 80s D&D, this book is wild, dude. This book is so much fun. I have it up on the PDF as well because I wasn't sure if I could find it, but yeah, it's hard to see on this screen, so I can bring it up on the PDF. It is the Lovecraft edition. Yeah, this is the original one. So there's been multiple printings of this. The original printing of this, which I have up on the screen so I can zoom in on it a little bit so it's easier to see, actually has like gods from different. They originally like had gods from different mythos. So they're like, oh, it's the different Chinese gods, because there wasn't like a set D&D setting. Like today, Forgotten Realms is the D&D setting, and they just use Forgotten Realms. So you're like, oh, all the gods from Forgotten Realms are the D&D gods. And it's so weird to me to see people that are new to the hobby asking questions like, is that canon to Dungeons and Dragons? Because like, Dungeons and Dragons is a system. It's not a world. There was Greyhawk. Yeah, Greyhawk was like one of their oldest settings, right? And Greyhawk was like from the 70s, back in the day, right? But all these gods are not from that. Like, they're just gods from everything because they just threw whatever they wanted at D&D. So people are like, is that canon to D&D? I'm like, there's nothing canon to D&D. That doesn't make any sense. But like, for example, Loviatar, sorry for the booba, but this is artistic nudity. We're going to cover it up with the little thumb here. Is a goddess that ended up being quote-unquote canon to D&D because she's in other D&D settings. But she's originally in this module in this book as a Finnish mythos god, right? And then in this module, you also have the Greek god. So you see some standard monsters, like a Cyclops is basically like a basic D&D monster that you might find. And then you also see, like, Dionysus, which is what I based one of my gods in my campaign setting on, because Dionysus is fucking cool. But, like, that's just a god you could worship in D&D because they didn't have, if you wanted to set your campaign in, like, ancient Greece, you could have, like, Hades Hecate and all those gods, like, be the gods of your campaign. That was fine. And they have stats for them, because in these cases, you could actually encounter the gods and maybe, like, interact with them. Stuff. So one of the things that's really interesting about the first printing of this particular book is that it also has shit from, like, different authors' worlds. So you've got the Nuhan mythos, and this one, the Melbonian mythos. This was taken out of later editions because it's Michael Moorcock's fantasy setting. It's in the first edition of this book, though. So, like, all of this is taken from, like, a different fantasy setting that was completely orthogonal to D&D. But they just used those different gods. And, like, Cthulhu is also in here. Let me just... What page is it? And they tell you how you could theoretically be a cleric of Cthulhu. So, yeah, Cthulhu Mythos, page 43. So, you could theoretically be a cleric of Cthulhu in the old school D&D. Because Cthulhu was public domain, and Cthulhu was originally in this book. So, like, they had stats for Cthulhu in here. Yeah, from the Elric stories, yeah. So if you wanted to, like, you could be like, oh yeah, I'm a cleric of Yog-Sothoth. Cthulhu cleric would go hard AF. That was legal, like, legal D&D. Like, old school, like, first edition advanced D&D, you could be a cleric of Cthulhu, Thop-Nigroth, Yog-Sothoth. Like, all those characters you could be a cleric of. Haster. Say Haster, because that'll summon... Yeah, anytime the name Haster is spoken. I said it again. There's a 25% that he will hear. I better say Beetlejuice to counteract that. Nyarlathotep, like, all of that is in this book. This is before Call of Cthulhu was a published game. So, like, all of those characters are, like, in this book. The deep ones are in here. Like, you have stats for all this stuff. So if you wanted to do, like, a setting, what would they even focus on? Transmutation? Let's look at the clerics, because, like, remember, this was totally different. So, say you're a cleric of Cthulhu. Cthulhu, they have stats. They have stats for Cthulhu. And they also talk about, like, all the history. Unit magical control, blah, blah, blah. But remember, this was, like, totally different back in the day in terms of, like, how the clerics worked and stuff. So they don't have a lot of info for... Oh, here we go. Cthulhu is served by the Deep Ones, as well as human worshippers, and often interbred with fishmen. Cthulhu's cult is usually hidden in secret, is dedicated about to bringing back Cthulhu's return. They have a bit more for Azathoth here. Those who worship Azathoth worship insanity. Azathoth's clerics are themselves insane. It is unknown how Azathoth grants powers to his clerics, or if Azathoth is aware of them, which is doubtful. So, in today's Dungeons & Dragons, if you were to be, like, a servant of a deep one, or, like, a servant of, like, a great old one like this, your class would probably be Warlock, because Warlocks can, you, like, worship, like, the great old ones and stuff like that. They did not have that class back then, right? So, in terms of modern D&D, you probably would make a Warlock to worship these characters. But if you wanted to go back, pull this book, and, like, it's on Internet Archive. There's a version of it on Internet Archive, so it's the same book. So if you wanted to pull this and be like, I'm gonna come up with a cleric of Azathoth, for example, you could create that cleric. They probably would be evil, because worshippers aligned can be, oh, actually, chaotic neutral. You could be a chaotic neutral Azathoth cleric. Right? So you can create a chaotic neutral cleric. Some of these are chaotic evil only, but, like, this one, for example, Cthulhu, Master of the Fire Element, I mean, you could easily use this as a bad guy. Like, you could have a fire element cleric. This character has direct connection with the primordial plane members of Palace of Fire. Palace of Fire are said to be filled with treasure, resistant to flame and heat, gems, and magic items. And then they even have, like, a minion type creature that you could throw at them as, like, a fire elemental. There's, like, a lot of really fun stuff you could do, like, just with the hooks in this book. And, like, here's Yog-Sothoth. You know, the Elder Sign, they talk about that. They're, like, the Necronomicon is in here. Like, look at this illustration. It's so wild. Well, I'm partially covering it. Let me get out of the way again for a second. move. Okay, so you can... this illustration is wild. Like, look at this crazy outsider art that they used to use for, like, D&D. Like, this thing with all these mouths and, like, this cartoony lady dropping her flowers when she sees the Elder Beast. Tell me that doesn't fucking own. Old school D&D is so cool. The cult leaders being clerics, serving in warlock packs. Yeah, exactly. Like, you can have a cleric and then you can warlock pack. Or do a whole setting with the Egyptian gods. They've got all the Egyptian gods here. You can have the... You know, so this is just... Old school D&D is wild. It's totally different. This is why people, like... People love old school D&D is because it's so out of pocket. It's so over the top. It's so fucking wacky. It's so hodgepodge. Throw everything at it and see what sticks. Like, we have lost a lot of that today with the codified, the way, like, people care about what is and isn't canon. You want to be a cleric of Thor? Mother effing Thor from Marvel Comics? Guess what? Here's his whole deal. Worshippers align, all alignments, especially warriors. Yep, all good. You want to be a paladin of Thor? They've even got stats from Mjolnir in here. Why not? It's so cool. And we miss on this, I think, partially because they don't dig into this public domain stuff as much, but also, like, some of this stuff wasn't even public domain. Like, that's one of the reasons they reprinted this book. Like, originally, there wasn't halflings, it was hobbits. That was literally originally what it was, and they had to change it because they didn't have the rights. And Lord of the Rings doesn't go into public domain for, like, another 10 years. So, like, in another 10 years, we can have hobbits in D&D again, and it won't be a copyright violation. But until then, it's halflings. It's the same thing. Oh, now we're in Japanese mythos, so, like, you wanna have, like, yeah, be a beaver, like a park. Yeah, you can do that. So that's the way it used to be, right? So, Amaterasu, cleric of Amaterasu, goddess of the sun. Fun. Chaos domain cleric that has intense spellcasting abilities, pulling the wrist matters or something. Mutant stuff is definitely not public domain. It's not public domain. That's why they had to reprint the book. That's why the original print of this, which I'm so happy to have an original print of it, but it's rare because, like, they weren't supposed to. They weren't supposed to do that. They weren't supposed to do that, right? Oh my god, it's so interesting how they just kind of, like, said hell with it. Yeah, they said hell with it, and they just, like, made this book, and this book does not. This book breaks all the rules. Cthulhu is public domain, by the way. But some of the stuff in here is not public domain. They just sort of, like, oops, whoopsies. This stuff is, like, the Finnish mythos fine, the Egyptian mythos fine, but the Moorcock stuff is not public domain. Yeah, I'm really lucky to have a copy of it. This is a very, very cool book to have. But, like, this is what the reason I'm showing all this stuff isn't just because they're like, oh, it's cool. It's because, like, old school D&D didn't have, like, a canon or a necessarily set universe that it took place in. There were different universes that took place in, like we mentioned, Greyhawk. Like, Greyhawk was one of the old settings, like the original setting for D&D. But these days, in 5th edition, Forgotten Realms is a setting for D&D. So when you look at, like, for example, the movie that came out, like Honor Among Thieves, that's set in Forgotten Realms. And when you look at Baldur's Gate, all of those video games are set in Forgotten Realms because the Baldur's Gate games have always been set in Forgotten Realms because that's where Baldur's Gate is. But you have to separate the idea of Dungeons and Dragons from Forgotten Realms, because a lot of people, I have seen newer players to D&D be like, is that canon to D&D? And nothing is canon to D&D. D&D is just a system. Forgotten Realms is a place. There's different settings you could run D&D in, and it was not really common practice to give a fuck about what was canon to D&D back when you were running games. Yeah, back when you were running games, like, it wasn't common to care about that. You would make your own setting, and you would just mix and matchy stuff from different settings. The 2024 DMG has a Greyhawk setting guide. Yeah, so Greyhawk is coming back. And, like, I want to say that I have 5th edition books for a couple different settings. I didn't look through everything that I have, but I have 3rd edition Dragonlance upstairs. Which, yeah, we were talking about Dragonlance earlier because I forgot that there was a 1st edition Dragonlance because I associated with 2nd edition, 1st edition. But I have, like, 3rd edition Dragonlance, which is not as good, but, like, 3rd edition in general sucks in my opinion. And I've talked about why. Like, because it's very much more about, like, theory craft. It has a lot of deliberately bad choices that they made to make it more system mastery-ish and less fun to actually play and practice unless you, like, make your character optimally. Whereas 4th edition's more of a tactical board game. Now, one of the downsides of 4th edition is that it's less setting focused because there isn't really a setting for 4th edition. But again, like, back in the day, you didn't have a set setting for your D&D. You would homebrew everything. And, like, it's very easy to homebrew shit in 4th edition because they give you, like, very, very specific guidelines for how to set up encounters. And how to set up encounters that, like, match the party's skill level was something that they started in 3.5, but they really had it figured out in 4th edition, where it was really easy to, like, develop encounters and dungeons that really matched the party's needs, and really fun to, like, homebrew settings and dungeons in that edition, because the actual canon setting for 4th edition, which is Points of Light, is nothing. There's almost no information about setting, which means it's very easy to, like, transplant it to, like, pretty much any homebrew D&D setting that you want, as long as you have, like, the basic races and classes in your setting. Celtic gods, mostly for druids, so, like, all of these are different, you know. We're about to hit ads again. I'm gonna get up and take a bathroom break. So in a minute, I'm gonna take a short AFK and get another soda. And then I'll be right back, okay? Sounds good? I'm really enjoying going through all this chat with you. When I get back, we'll do the Yawning Portal, because I want to talk about some stuff in that book as well. Alright, be right back. Okay, I'm back, but we're still on ads for like 40 seconds. Back to the last room real quick. You know, I have said I've done Cthulhu stuff on the stream before because I played Sucker for Love. And I played the second one. So I think the VOD is still up. Like somebody said they found me from that VOD, which is really great. That was a fun game. Every time I say the name of the black goat, I'm like, oh wait, did I accidentally say a slur? Please don't clip me out of context. Like, alright, no, it's just... I mean, it's a black goat, okay, guys? We're back from ads. So I've talked about D&D 3rd edition, I've talked about 4th edition. I've talked about why I like 4th edition. I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition. Because 5th edition is very interesting. As I mentioned before, 5th edition was play-tested on 1st edition modules. I know because I was in 2 of those playtests. It tested on Barrier Peaks, it was tested on Keep of the Borderlands. And they were tested on 1st edition modules because they really wanted to recapture like the feeling of old school D&D. But 5th edition is not old school D&D. 5th edition is very much a compromise between trying to feel like old school D&D, which is kind of a feeling you can't recapture with modern sensibilities. Because with modern sensibilities, people care about stuff like, what is canon? Which nobody shit about. Like, you know, like, you shouldn't care about that, but people do. And, like, tournament play is much bigger and broader and more organized. It's not just a handful of guys in a basement anymore. Now it's, like, a bunch of different people all over the world. Most of the US, but, like, it's a worldwide thing. Actually, Call of Cthulhu was bigger in Japan, I found out, than D&D is, which is kind of wild, but it's still... And, as a reminder, D&D 5th edition has been actively the version people play for the last 10 years, which is actually kind of crazy. So they're making some noise about doing a 6th edition, which, when they playtested 5th edition, they didn't call it 5th edition, they called it D&D Next. And they were like, no, this is Dungeons & Dragons. We're not calling it 5th edition, we're calling it Dungeons & Dragons. But, like, that will never fucking work. They're just gonna call it 6th edition when it comes out. And they should give up immediately on this idea of, no, this is just called Dungeons & Dragons. We're rebooting it because nobody's gonna call it that whatsy. Everybody's gonna call it 6th edition. Or 5.5 if that's what you're doing. So I would roughly separate 5 into 2 sort of eras, even though these are loose, because I don't really know, like, when the transition happened. But there's a point at which 5th edition very much became a spectator sport. And I'm part of this, because I used to stream D&D, right? Like, the first streaming that I did was running Dungeons & Dragons for the local group. And, like, I only became a VTuber when COVID happened, and I couldn't, like, join the group anymore. Like, we were, you know, hanging out in person. Spicy was there, you remember? And that, during that period of time, like, pre-COVID, especially, but certainly, like, you know, it's been 5 years since that happened, right? Dungeons & Dragons was a game that live streamers play. Like, Critical Role has, like, a huge piece of that. And it became, like, a game you would go see at live shows, watching actors play and do improv on stage playing. That did not used to be what the game was. And I feel like that is a very slow transition that we've done over the past few years, because D&D has evolved with technology, right? So D&D 3.5 was a game... Tabletop Talk, thank you for coming! Thank you for subbing! Yeah, we're having Tabletop Talk tonight because I have wanted to get, like, this big rant out of my system for so long, and I've been going for, like, 2 hours now, and I've got, like, another hour in me at least, and, like, bits for a little bit. How about Penny Arcade? Absolutely, Penny Arcade was a big part of it, because Penny Arcade would do, like, their long, like, actual plays they would do on stage, right? I've seen a couple of those live. Well, you know, the whole VOD is on YouTube, so if you have opinions, that's great, because so do I. You missed me talking about 4th edition, because I'm talking about 5th edition now. Oh, my screen isn't showing 5th edition. What's something 5th edition-y on the screen? from 5th. I'm doing something trolly here. Being a little troll. Let's get 5th edition. That's Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition. What up? Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition is smiling celebrities rolling d20s at you. they're all beautiful and famous, and D&D isn't for nerds anymore. D&D is for these incredibly attractive people to play on TV and for you to watch them play. I was of two minds about this turn for Dungeons and Dragons. I opened the stream by playing that Dungeons and Dragons is Satan's game. Can I have them out and do, if there's any girls there, I want to do them clip, which is, to me, the purest essence of Dungeons and Dragons. And somewhere, and I was part of this, I was in the middle of this while this was happening. At some point, it transitioned into a game for very pretty people to play on camera. As opposed to for grogs to play in their basements. Right? Did that happen overnight? No, it happened over the last decade. It's suddenly, suddenly I wasn't pretty enough to play Dungeons and Dragons anymore. Which is wild, which is crazy to me. True. So I used to run 4th edition at a game store. That was a really fun campaign. I had a really good time with it. It was a homebrew setting because 4th edition is suited to that. And we would rent the table for exactly 4 hours. So I got really, really good at nailing a 4-hour session. In and out 4 hours every single time. It would be a beautifully timed, like, this is exactly, we'd have 2 or 3 encounters. We'd do a skill check. We'd have a dungeon. It would end like in a satisfying way after 4 hours every single time because that was as long as we rented the table for. And let me tell you, I had 8 players at that table as well. So I was really lightning quick on my feet when it came to running 4th edition D&D. And that is one of the reasons that I switched to a streaming format, is because I felt like I was quick enough on my feet to do it for an audience at that point. And I had many times had an audience when we were running at the game store because people would like peek over. We kind of had like a little room in the back. 8 players, yeah, it was a crazy table. It was nuts. These days I would only run for like maybe 5 or 6 at the most, but I did run for 8 players. And I kept that shit moving, dude, because I wanted to have 3 encounters per session with an 8-player table. So I got fast enough to run it like at that pace live. Yes, beautiful people have always played D&D. As much as I'm joking, fucking, I was a hot chick playing D&D. that was what I did. You know, that was my whole life. And you know, we used to do it a lot, but I do feel like there has been. Why Matt Mercer's head is cut off, and like I can't scroll up everybody's face. His face is like half cut off. I don't know what's going on with the way this website is like. Matt Mercer over there. But like I do feel like there is a certain new type of DM that holds themselves to some kind of invisible imaginary standard. Like they have to be a professional voice actor to be a DM, which is not the same skill set. In fact, as much as I joke around, I couldn't really get into Critical Role because Critical Role is not my style of D&D. I think when you watch the cartoon, the Vox Machina cartoon, they cut the fat and they get right to like the action, and I'm interested in that. But I don't really care for like all the fucking around that they do, where they'll like meet some shopkeeper and like talk to the shopkeeper for 45 minutes because they just want to do funny voices at each other. That always bothers me. I'm just like, play the game! Get on with it! It's not my jam, okay? Like, I like it when there's action, I like there's more adventure. I don't like it when there's like a lot of fucking around happening. And I feel like Critical Role has a lot of fucking around because they're improv voice actors who just want to do improv shit. So, you know, I'm making jokes about it, but like, it's not really the way that I play the game. Like, I play the game like I really am interested in the adventure. I'm interested in the action. I'm not interested in like the interactions with shopkeepers and stuff like that. This is not my fucking jam. Shadowrun's a whole different ballgame. Shadowrun mentioned. I have played Shadowrun. I've never run it. I have issues with Shadowrun. Different stream. They have been playing 5e the whole time. This is true. This is true. And 5e is very much a compromised D&D. 5e is stripped down a little bit. I will say that. It's stripped down from old school, it's stripped down from first edition, it's stripped down from second edition, and it's stripped down partially to look good on camera, which is not the original design goals of 5e. Original design goals of 5e was like, let's recapture the old school feeling in a new package. But over the years, it has drifted slightly because of all the on-camera play. And I think that's very, very interesting. Like, it's just a strange evolution. It's not crunchy enough. It's very, yeah, no, it's stripped down. It is. I was good to promote this. You guys saying the podcast from Shadowrun actual play? Okay, I will listen to that at some point. I have my issues with Shadowrun, but yeah, that's a different stream. Level 3 casters should really be 5e. Let's see, I feel like base class and getting. So, I'm going to open up this book, The Yawning Portal, because I want to talk a little bit about what's in The Yawning Portal, because I feel like The Yawning Portal book is very, very illustrative of the compromises made in 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons. And the reason I use this book in particular as, like, my litmus test here is because this book is made up of modules from older editions of D&D, right? So the older editions of D&D, let me... this camera screen so you can see it. The older editions of D&D have different flavors. And you can taste every one of those flavors in this book. When 5th edition is trying to compromise between all those different editions, you can taste every flavor of D&D that there is. Because it starts out with 2 3.5 modules. And 3.5 D&D is, to me, like eating the blandest fucking gruel. Right? Now, these modules are at a slight disadvantage because the 3.5 D&D modules are also low-level modules. Which means low-level D&D is not the most interesting of D&D, which I will acknowledge. Like, oh, I'm fighting kobolds and goblins? Okay, word. But if you look at the Sunless Citadel, like the way it's scripted out, this is a perfectly fine intro to D&D. If you have never played D&D in your life and don't know anything about D&D, this is fine. But design-wise, it's very boring. Okay? Stick with me here. Design-wise, it's very boring. The actual module is full of stale-ish enemies. Yeah, if you're brand fucking new to D&D, this is a fine intro to it. Don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's got all the basics of D&D that you would need to understand to play D&D. But it's also very, like, logical. I don't know how else to explain it. It's, like, logical. It's like everything is laid out in a way that, like, makes sense. And there's civilian goblins in the dungeon. And everything is very gray. There's no crazy batshit in this module, alright? It's not insane. It's not nutty. It's not wacky. It's not abstract. It's a dungeon full of goblins and kobolds, and you rescue some people, and everything in it makes sense, and I'm bored. It's boring. It's fucking boring to me. I'm sorry. Like, remember the thing I just showed you? With the bunny on a stump, this crazy ass shit. I like this, okay? My taste is more along the lines of wacky, doohickey crap. At the same time, it suffers from the 5e curse where everything wants to talk about it. That's true. Every single thing in here wants to kill you. There's nobody you can, like, really talk to or negotiate with. It's, like, everything wants to murder you. There's no twists to, like, any of these encounters. The second module in here, Forge of Fury, is also a 3.5 module. And it's also fucking boring. I'm just telling you like it is. Like, 3.5 is a fucking boring edition of D&D. And anytime they take stuff from 3.5, like, I think there's a few things in 3.5 that were kind of imaginative. Dark Sun is a 3.5 setting, or is a 3rd edition setting, so that's kind of interesting. It's very different. But for the most part, this stuff is kind of... Yeah, Eberron. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah, Eberron is 3.5, yeah. For the most part, this stuff is kind of, like, very paint by numbers, very standard. Dark Sun is 2nd ed. Okay, and that's right. Eberron is 3.5, Dark Sun is 2nd. Okay. I had the two confused. My bad. I've never played either of those settings. So has anybody, by the way, played Eberron or Dark Sun? I've played Planescape. I've played Spelljammer. I've played Dragonlance, obviously. I've played Greyhawk. Eberron and Dark Sun are both like, yeah, they're both great settings. Planescape, yeah, we talked about it earlier. But I haven't played Eberron or Dark Sun, so... if anybody has good experiences with either of those settings, feel free to chime in the chat, because those are not my areas of expertise. Uh-oh. Everybody has to have gaps in their knowledge. That's mine. I've never done Eberron or Dark Sun. Oh, yeah, there was a 4th edition Dark Sun. You know what I did play 4th edition and what I still have a copy of? Gamma World. I still have a copy of that, 4th edition. That's fun. Mutants? Honestly, I'm just making this connection for the first time, but Caves of Cud is a lot like Gamma World. It's all like everybody's like mutants and radiations and stuff. Oh, yeah. So, yeah, Eberron is magic punky robots. Okay, I didn't know that. Okay, I always confuse them too because I haven't played. It's watered down. It is watered down. It is watered down. It is very compromisey. It's very watered down. I agree. Oh, excuse me. Belched. Belly of your Gamma World? I have a Gamma World 4th ed. And I used to run that. It's really fun. Because it's so wacky. Like you're like, I'm a rat man. And I have a mutant arm. I don't know, it's just crazy. This is another 3.5 edition module, okay? Get ready. Get ready. We're going back to 1st edition. 3.5. Boom. Suddenly we're in 1st edition. And look at the fucking colors. What? There's colors and ideas again? We must be looking at 1st edition modules. Now, I've seen somebody say that they hated running this because as a campaign module, it's very trap focused. It's a lot more like Tomb of Horrors. It's like get in, get the treasure, and get out. There's not a lot of story to it. That's because how 1st edition modules are like that. Hidden Shrine of... So this module, all of a sudden, instead of things like being fucking logical, things are kind of weird. Because this is a module from the 70s. 1980, actually. Yes, it was a tournament module. And this is a module designed to be run at a tournament. So all of a sudden, it's full of weird-ass, colorful, weird shit. Like, you would not... This kind of design... I'm gonna show another illustration real quick, because it's somewhere. For it, real quick. There's like a weird... Where's the monster that I was looking for? Crap, I'm moving my thing real quick. Find it. Because all of a sudden, there's like feathered serpents, there's like creepy creatures, there's weird ass monsters. The tournament modules are a totally different beast. Okay, so look at this illustration. Look at that. Look at that body horror. And then look at this. Look at this undead centaur with the feathers on his head. You are not seeing this kind of thing in 3.5. Because 3.5 is just not this batshit. If 3.5 was ever this batshit, it was stealing it from 1st edition. Because first edition was not afraid to just not make sense, right? Like, first edition was just not afraid to just say, like, I don't care if it makes sense. This is that creepy, this is the bad guy, right? So, like, the Pathfinder gets wacky, but yeah, but I've never played Pathfinder, and I don't have any experience at all in Pathfinder. Like, I'm not talking about it. But if anybody wants to run a Pathfinder game so I can experience it, I will. But the reason that I have steered clear of Pathfinder is because everybody said it's 3.75, and I thought 3.5 sucked. I hated 3.5. Why would I want to play more 3.5? And I've played so much 3.5, too. So this is another old school 1979 dungeon. And when you get into these ones that are from the 70s, they're just they're wild, they're crazy. They have these like maps that are like, look at this mountain. All of a sudden it goes like fucking nuts. It's just so different. So one of the modules in this book that I actually ran was Dead and Thay. Now Dead and Thay is interesting because Dead and Thay is a 4th edition, 5th edition module. It was basically built for like a 5th edition playtest, but it has 4th edition sensibilities. And this module is so fun. Look at how crazy this dungeon is. I ran this. We had a blast. This module is great. It's got like the whole colored key card gimmick. It's got all these different colored sectors of like different places you can go. There's like different bosses. This is enormous. I ran this as part of our tabletop game that I ran a couple years ago. And this one is a blast. Now, did I noted it up? Because obviously you have to scribble on it. Yeah, you have to make changes to it. But it's weird. It's wacky. And the reason it's weird and wacky is because it's a 4th edition sensibility module. So if you look at the difference between like this crazy shit versus this crazy shit, which is 1st edition, versus what I think is like extremely boring gray design in 3.5. Which is one of the reasons that I think this book is really interesting, because it shows you the design sensibilities of D&D over the years. If you're designing for 4th edition, you're designing these crazy arenas that are not present in like other versions of the game. So I'm gonna forward to. Here's another Dead and Thay page. Like, look at these crazy room designs. They're so fun. It's a huge, huge dungeon. So in this book, they also have Against the Giants, which is another really old school module that's really interesting. This one's 1981. And you're gonna again see like super colorful illustration. Well, it depends, because I can't commit to anything because I am so busy and I'm also streaming like all the time on my own. So if it's like a long-term commitment, I probably can't commit to it. But I would definitely play like 4 or 5 sessions of Pathfinder just to get my feet wet, you know? Ice. Very colorful. Pathfinder that was even crunchier, telling you D sucked and they should play their game. Everybody who plays D&D thinks D&D sucks. And the last thing that's in this book, which I do not think it should be the culmination of your campaign. I think it is a bad idea to make a campaign that builds up to this. But the last thing in this book is their version of the Tomb of Horrors, right? We looked at the Tomb of Horrors earlier, but I just want to point out that, first of all, a lot of the text in this Tomb of Horrors is the same as the text in the 1975 version. So a lot of text is the same. So that they got right. But I want to show you the map real quick, because this is the map. So remember I showed you the map earlier of what Tomb of Horrors looks like, and it's written in blue for like the whole Xerox thing we mentioned? Look at how they colored it in this. This is not what it fucking looks like. This is not what it looks like! This room should look like the Big Gay Ice Cream Parlor, because that's what this room is supposed to look like. This is the pillar room. Okay? Whoever illustrated this, it's brown. It should not be brown. This should be the Rainbow Bright Room. I read you the description. This whole room is painted in pastel colors. It should be the Rainbow Bright Room. It should not be brown. The whole tomb is colorful. It's not like this. The illustration is wrong. Okay? But that's just how our world has changed since we did these games, because it used to be in full-ass Technicolor. You know? So all these pictures in here where they're like, ooh, this is so creepy and it's so evil. Actually, that wasn't what it looked like. It wasn't what it looked like at all. And if I were to ever run the Tomb of Horrors, you can bet that I would run the original version. If you read the text, it's the same. Like, if you actually read the way the text is written, it's the exact same in that room. It's the same in the room with tree chests. It's the same in the fall storeroom. I don't know if it's the same in the one... I don't know if they did the thing that changes your... Because I bet you they didn't go that far in this. I bet you they thought people would be mad. Great Hall of Spheres. I'm going to read this. This is in this... So discover the brown of the world is doomed. Sorry, I'm also, like, my cam is, like, not showing anything. Back to this. Back to... Back to the original two. West wall, gold. East wall, pale blue. There's all these different, spheres being held by murals, right? Oh, this is wrong. This is fucked up. This is actually a bad illustration, so I'm gonna show it to you because it's bad. It's fucked up. This is a three-armed gargoyle. Okay, this is drawn poorly because, oh, I'm frowning. Why am I frowning? I must have hit the sad button. I'm so mad. Okay. This is drawn poorly because the point of the three-armed gargoyle is you're supposed to give it jewels in its hand. So it's supposed to have its hand open as if to accept something, not this downward claw business. That's not what it would look like. It's supposed to have its hands open to accept gems, but you're supposed to give it jewels so that it can give you a treasure in return. That's just fucked up. That's just not even right. Find the picture of the actual... Let me find the picture of what it's supposed to look like. Yeah, here we go. This is the real one. Get out of the way again. Yeah. Why do I keep hitting the cry button? I must be bumping up my... Like, this is the real one, okay? See how its hands are, like, cupped so that it can accept a gift being given to it, right? Because the idea is that you're supposed to give it jewels. Like, you put a jewel in each hand and it crushes them and then it gives you something in return. That makes sense with the way this one is illustrated, okay? Now look at the way that they illustrated it for modern day. It's wrong because they illustrated it with its hands down. Where would you put the jewel? What artist did this? Idiot! It's the little things, okay? It's the little things. Like, in an effort to make it more intimidating and spookier, they defeat the purpose of what it's there for, which is it's supposed to give you're supposed to sacrifice stuff to it. You couldn't sacrifice stuff to this because its hands are not positioned with a cup for you to put the object in. They wanted to make it look creepy, so they drew it this way. Did I mean, like, by modern D&D? Like, modern D&D pisses me off. Like, I don't know. Like, it's because they just don't think about, like, what the purpose of that is. They want to make it look scary, but it's not supposed to look scary. It's supposed to look like you're supposed to give it something, because it's a puzzle. I don't know what else to say. I don't know what more to say. Like, that just sums it up perfectly, in my opinion. It's a puzzle. It's a puzzle boss. So you're supposed to give it stuff in its hands. Now you know that. Now Tomb of Horrors will spoil it for you. But, like, if it's illustrated like this, it's more obvious that you're supposed to give it stuff. Because see how its hands are, like, cupped? That kind of thing matters. You don't fight it. It's not a monster. It's just a statue. But you know that, because I'm telling you that. But, like... somewhere we lost our way. That's all I'm saying. Not thinking about the environmental storytelling. Exactly. They weren't thinking about what this environment actually communicates. And look, I'm not gonna mince words, okay? Gygax had his flaws as a person, but this stuff was designed with intent, right? And the intent was to be mean, make you laugh, piss you off, whatever. But it wasn't like to scare you exactly, because it's kind of wacky. No, it's kind of goofy. I wasn't there. I wasn't at Origin 75. I don't know what it was. The atmosphere was like. I can read about it. I can read this. I can look at the illustration. I can look at these like kind of outsider-looking art. But I see a big difference between the design of this with its hands up, where the indication is that it's also clearly missing an arm. Yes, exactly. The arm is fallen off and it's at the base. That's part of the puzzle. The part of the puzzle is that the arm is fallen off. Like, I couldn't play Tomb of Horrors because I've read it too many times. Like, I know how to beat Tomb of Horrors. Like, but the puzzle, this is part of the puzzle, right? And this is designed in a very video gamey way. I'm sorry, it's sideways, but like, it's designed in a very video gamey way where like, oh, I understand that this is a puzzle and it's an environmental puzzle and I was supposed to put something in these three hands to get this fourth hand to do something. Like, that just seems like that makes sense to me. But when it's illustrated with the hands down, pointing downward, all of a sudden the point of the illustration is completely lost, because the way that they're cupped indicates you're supposed to put jewels in those other three hands. That's what you're supposed to do. And it's a cheap, like, it's cheap, but like, you get it, right? Like, this makes sense as a puzzle. Whereas the other one with the hands down, it doesn't make any sense to draw it that way. But our way of like doing things in a modern sensibility. So a lot of people have tried to recreate the idea of the Tomb of Horrors. Like, oh, this dungeon has a lot of traps to fuck you over. But they have done it without like the color and comedy of the Tomb of Horrors. And I feel like that's just kind of a misstep. But don't let me spoil that one for you anymore. I've never actually played it. I've read it many times. Yeah, it's still pretty esoteric, but there's at least indication you try. Yeah, it's still pretty confusing. Like, I wouldn't necessarily know exactly what to do with this. You know, but it does have a better clue, at least, for what you should do. At least to me. Whereas the hands being down, then it's totally confusing. A close look at the open and outstretched hands of the statue will determine that a large gem will fit perfectly in a carved depression in each of the three remaining hands. That's what it says. But that gives you an idea of like the difference between first edition modules versus third edition modules versus fourth edition modules. Because the fourth edition modules are way more about environment storytelling, about like crazy stuff you can do with the environment. Oh, let me show you the last room of I ran this dungeon. Let me show you the last room. This is the last room of Dead End Bay. This is a fourth edition module. It's cool, right? it's like a triangular shaped like battleground for the boss. Badass. Third edition did not have this kind of thing. Third edition didn't have this kind of weird, wacky, like... Third edition is very grounded in a way that I think earlier editions are not. And fifth edition, in that fifth edition can encompass both this kind of design and this kind of design. This is first edition. First edition kind of design. And at the same time, they suggest these third edition ass modules for you to intro fifth edition. It's a compromise, right? They're compromising a game that can fit both this style of play and that wackier, weirder style of play in the same game. And I feel like those sensibilities are different for me. I feel like the weird game and this grounded gray game are very different games. So that's my rant. I guess I'm finally like out of steam in a way. That was like almost 3 hours of me talking about Dungeons and Dragons. Good talking with you guys, by the way. Like, thank you guys for showing up and just giving me info, correcting me when I'm talking out of my ass, because it happens all the time. You know, at the end of the day, I only have my personal experience to work from. But also, like, I love this game. And I've been intimately attached to this game for, like, since it's been, you know, most of my unlife, right? I do want to run 4th edition again, because I like 4th edition. I think it's very board gamey, it's very actiony, it's very direct in its approach to how it treats players as superheroes, and as a little bit better than the average random peasant, and that's very different from old school D&D. Now, I also have Hackmaster, which is a revised 1st edition. I have a book for that. I could run Hackmaster. I promise you it would be a blast. I will never play or run 3.5 ever again. Because 3.5 is at one point too crunchy, and at another point not fucking crazy enough. It's too gray, it's too dull, it's too grounded for me as a player. Back and playing at playing back at 1.75 speed. Well, thank you so much. I'm waiting for 4.5 with you. Yeah, I'm in a couple months. I'm gonna be running a couple sessions of 4E, because I think I want to get back to it. I don't know exactly when, but I'm gonna be doing 4E. I think, because I really would like to get back to running 4E. It is my favorite edition. Well, I also like old school. I also like 1st and 2nd edition. But I really think that I miss 4E. I had a good time with it when I was running it. And I've run 5th edition. But the difference between my 5th edition campaign and my 4th edition campaigns is my 4th edition campaigns were a lot more homebrew, a lot more personal, and my 5th edition campaigns were a lot more from published material that was given to me by WotC. And while I don't mind published material, I do feel like 5th edition is way more balanced around the published material in a lot of ways, and it's a little bit harder to homebrew encounters with than 4th edition. And 2E is also fantastic. You know, 2E, like I said, was like kind of my first D&D in a lot of ways, and 2E was like the edition that I really 2E, 1E, because like a lot of that those lines get blurred back in the day. But 2E was the edition that I kind of started out with, and I think 2E was like the edition for storytelling, for setting building, for creating a character that like was meaningful and important to you as a person. I feel like that was just, and part of that is just because like, hey, that was the first edition I played, so I have big nostalgia for it. And I've played the other editions as well, but like, big nostalgia for that, right? So that's part of it is just the reason I like that. But I think the first edition that I really got comfortable running was 4E. Not that I didn't run 3.5, but I just did not enjoy 3.5 in the same way that I enjoyed 2nd edition and that I enjoyed 4th edition. And the reason that I didn't enjoy 3.5 was because of the system mastery stuff, was because there was so much focus on building a character and less focus on playing that character. And because they watered down the weirdness so much compared to older versions. The weirdness is where I think 2E really shines. Like, Planescape, Spelljammer, all that fucking weirdness should be part of this hobby. And I think people in the modern era have lost a lot of that weirdness, like in their... You know me, guys, I'm all about weird games, right? Like, a lot of times when I stream, I'm just saying, it's a weird game night. We're going to play a weird game. But I like it when stuff is weird. I like it when stuff is abstract. I like it when stuff is crazy. I like it when stuff is kind of... There's a term that somebody else used in a blog, and I'm going to quote them a little bit, but, like, batshit. Like, I'm reading this module, and where's the batshit? I don't want to go into a boring dungeon that has the same decorations as every other dungeon I've been in. I want to go into a dungeon full of batshit. I want to go into a dungeon where there's a ship in a bottle, and you can go inside the bottle and shrink down to half your size and walk around on the ship and then leave the ship and go back to your normal size. I want to go into a dungeon where there's walls made of living tapestries that turn into slime. I want to go into, I want to see this talking elephant rolling over me with a steamroller. Like, I want these columns that Willy Wonka your ass into the ceiling. Like, that's the kind of shit that I want to see. I don't want to see boring shit that makes sense. Real life makes sense. Yeah. There's a campaign in Pathfinder where you go to Earth, the Russian Revolution, to kill Rasputin. Oh, that's fun! Hell yeah! Hell yeah! Hackmaster! Yes, yes, yes. Hackmaster is a revised first edition for comedy purposes. So they increased the batshit level by a certain percent. I've never run Hackmaster, but I do have the I started DMing in 5e to tropes last time. I wonder when it came. Yeah. Do crazy shit, man. Do crazy stuff. In my second 4th edition campaign, I ran 2 4th edition campaigns. In the second one that I ran, it was a pirate-based campaign where they were like, everybody had a boat, and they went to an island, and they fought these mechanical pirates that were just the Pirates of the Caribbean from Disneyland. They were like Warforged that thought they were pirates. They only had like a couple gimmicks. They were like automatons. That was really funny. That's a really funny bit. Oh, there was also like a really good dungeon in that campaign, the Underground Swamp Dungeon, where you guys fought the frog guy. Yeah, like audio animatronics. Yeah. They had like a couple gimmicks that they did. They were all like lined up, and they showed up. I was like, "Where are we fighting these like pre-built guys that were built to think they were pirates, and they just think they're pirates, but they only had like 2 gimmicks." Oh, you still run 4E? Excellent. Yeah. So I'm thinking about getting back into running 4E. I ran 5E. Before, that was my first like streaming experience, was running 5E, but I'm gonna go back to running 4E because I really, really enjoyed running 4E. It's really fun. Now, in order to run 4E online, and I used to run it in person physically, like with a table and like a board, but in order to run it online, we're gonna have to use like RPG.net. We're gonna have to use like Roll20 because Roll20 is gonna have like the maps that we're gonna need to actually like do it, because you cannot run 4E without maps. It's impossible. Not impossible, but very, very, very ill-advised. Yeah. Because you want to have, like, that map so you can move their pieces. Yeah, there was another really good dungeon in that campaign where it was, like, slowly filling with water. And they were the guy at the end was, like, a mutated frogman, right? And, like, there was all these rooms that were, like, very slowly flooding as they advanced through the dungeon. It was really cool. It was a really fun dungeon to design and a fun dungeon to run. Of course, that was the same party that TPK'd to a black dragon, because there was a lot of water in that campaign, because it was a water-based campaign. I feel that's to have the many players of DM STs have different game systems and what you need. Well, a fun water it was a fun water temple. Yes, I invented a fun water temple. I know it sounds impossible, but I did it. I'm smart. Yeah, the final boss was like a big fat mutated frogman. And he was like trying to escape, but he was too fat to like move very much of his own accord. He could kind of hop, but how he actually got around was that he had guys like lifting him up on a he had 4 guys and a tarp, and they like lifted him up and ran with him. He was not very mobile, is the point that I'm making. Because he was, like, kind of half mutated into a frog, but he wasn't a good jumper. So they, like, had to, like, move the guy around. Really fun. I found out too, he has an encounter against legally distinct Godzilla? That's so fun. That's cool. I love that. The one person who likes... Yeah, palanquin. That's what I was gonna say. I couldn't think of the word. I'm losing a lot of words today. Bad day to do a Just Chatting stream when all these words are falling out of my brain. But yeah, they had him on a palanquin, and they were like trying to move him around. So like you could like kill one of his assistant guys to stop him from moving around the map, and then it was like easier to chase him down. But his assistant guys had enough HP where it was like a little bit tricky. So it was a whole like mobile encounter weird fight. Now I personally have run multiple different RPGs. I've run World of Darkness stuff. I've played World of Darkness stuff. I really, really like the D10 system for more like story-based games in particular. I've run a lot of Call of Cthulhu at conventions as well. Call of Cthulhu is great for if you want a really deadly campaign. I have run... I'm a big fan of like little indie RPGs, so I've run a lot of random little indie RPGs. So I agree with you in that D&D is not like a super flexible system for things that aren't D&D. One of the things that's interesting about D&D 3.5 is they did the open gaming license of Yale. I haven't played Blades in the Dark. No. Do they have any preferred old Forge games? Ooh, that's a great question. Forge introduced me to a lot of different games. Let me think of the ones that I actually liked. I did play Wizards with those folks. I'm kind of racking my brain because it's been a long time since I played a lot of those, but I will definitely get back to you thinking about what all did I do with that group. And I was at Forge Midwest, I think, twice. So I played a lot of random shit with that group. There's a lot of games, like, what sticks out in my brain is the stuff I didn't like, which I know sounds bad, but, like, I don't like any game where the rules are messed up enough to the point where you just kind of have to bullshit your way through the game. Right? Like, I very much remember playing Dogs in the Vineyard with Vincent. And I played Dogs in the Vineyard, and I was like, I hate this. Because I don't like how you have to just bullshit your way through. Like, oh, I guess I'm using my Bible now. Like, this is so, like, inside baseball if you haven't played Dogs in the Vineyard. But, like, Dogs in the Vineyard is a game where you basically will justify to the GM, like, why you should be rolling certain dice in the first place. And it's a very specific setting where you're in the Old West and you're also like doing religious conversion. You're trying to teach people your religion, like it's very specific. And yeah, you own Dogs in the Vineyard. Yeah, I didn't like dogs. Like that, and that's what sticks out to me. Like I didn't care for it because it felt like so much like I had to just like make up a reason. It's the Mormon game made by Mormons. It's very Mormon. Yeah, that's what it is. It's very much about like being a Mormon in the Old West trying to proselytize the Mormon religion to people. And it stuck out to me like, first of all, this is very Mormon. And second of all, like, why do I have to make up reasons for why I'm doing this particular thing? It just seems like it's just so much like fast talking my way into letting the GM let me roll certain dice. As opposed to the rules saying you should roll certain dice. I've done Exalted. I've done... What's that one where you play like... It's a diceless system where you play as gods? I'm trying to... Oops, wait, that's... I want to open that one. Josh, we spent like half this time talking about Universalis. Yeah, I think I've done that one. Amber. Yeah, Amber's the one that I'm thinking of. I've done Amber Diceless. Did not enjoy it for the same reason. It was like I just have to come up with some bullshit. There's just like a lot of games where it's like I have to come... Yeah, we talked about Tomb of Horrors for like a super long amount of time. I've done the Buffy RPG. I've done, I haven't done Apocalypse World. I haven't done that one. You're in a Buffy campaign right now? Buffy's alright. Buffy's pretty solid. Yeah, that one's alright. Forest is two. Yep, you missed that. I'll miss the whole Tomb of Horrors conversation. We literally went through the Tomb of Horrors. We were talking about it earlier. Yeah, I agree with you exactly. The way I would run that is give people extra life. I did a Legend of Five Rings campaign. Legend of Five Rings is super, super fun. I actually really like that one a lot. I would definitely recommend that one to anybody. Super fun. I haven't done Monster of the Week. There's a Buffy RPG. Yeah, Buffy RPG is solid too. Like, it's pretty decent. Like, I think you would enjoy it if you're like a fan of Buffy. Like, I mean, I've really, obviously Joss Whedon like has his problems, you know. Like, I wouldn't go into it now, but like, which L5R? I played that L5R campaign in. I'm trying to think of when that was. 2005? So 20 years ago? So which L5R edition is that? Looking up now. I think that's second edition. Interesting thing about Legend of the Five Rings is that Legend of the Five Rings was actually driven by the card game. So, like, people would go to a tournament. Oh, I think it was even earlier than that. I think I played L5R in, like, 2002. It was the D6 version, not the D20 version. So it was a long time ago at this point. Fun campaign, though. Really good. But the way they would alter the meta plot of L5R depending on how the card game tournaments went. Yeah, which was really, really neat, which was really cool. Yeah. So, like, basically, they would have a tournament, and they'd be like, oh, this particular house won the card game tournament? Okay, great. We're changing the meta plot of the game to focus on, like, this particular house now. This is crazy, like, the way they would do that. Like, it's so innovative, and nothing has really, like, matched that, in my opinion. Yeah, it's funny, too, the way they would do that. Like, if you would go to the card game, they would alter the meta plot of the RPG based on the tournament. Pathfinder Society did that a little bit too, yeah. Great Monster of the Week over Google Meetup for your tween during COVID. Oh, that's fun. I hear good things about Monster of the Week. I have not played it. I played a lot of random indie RPGs, like, I don't know, fucking 20 years ago. And then I have mostly played D&D over the last 10 years. Except for the one thing that I've been running consistently is Maid RPG. And I know that sounds great, that sounds wacky, but Maid RPG is just fun, wacky bullshit to run, like, for friends. Like, really quick to pick up and play. And it's I discovered it at Forge. The first time I played Maid was with Ron Edwards at Forge. And Maid RPG is a blast. So I've run it several times, and it's always a blast. I always have a good time with it. And the nice thing about Maid is that, like, Maid is completely improv-based. So, like, you basically, like, roll shit on charts, and, like, you just improv the entire session. And it's just wacky and fun. So, for the past couple of years, I did not run last year, but I've run Maid, and I've run Call of Cthulhu. Which I really like Call of Cthulhu as, like, a pick-up-and-play one-shot, because Call of Cthulhu is an extremely deadly game. So, like, if you have friends and you just want to screw around for a couple hours, and you're okay with everybody dying, Call of Cthulhu is a blast. Maid is bonkers. Yeah, Maid is really fun. Call of Cthulhu is really easy to learn. It's just percentile-based dice the whole time. So you roll percentile. So, like, Maid's a really fun convention game. The only thing I would say was, as somebody who has run Maid at conventions, just be sure that you, like, don't use the seduction rules, because it's fucking awkward to try and talk about that. As long as you're like, hey guys, we're not doing any of the sex stuff, just you're gonna keep it like PG-13, then you're gold. Because Maid does have, like, a lot of sex stuff in it, which, I mean, I'm not uncomfortable with that, because I'm crazy fucking VTuber who loves when there's hentai and things, but I would not, like, inflict that on strangers, right? So the last time we played Maid at Origins, I actually ran... Okay, guys, I'm about to go fucking deep in the weeds here, but, like, I don't know, notice me, senpai, whatever. I played Maid at Origins, and I ran HoloLive Maid. So, like, every single person who rolled up a character was also a HoloLive new recruit for HoloLive. That was the gimmick. So like, they made like fake VTubers. You say you're the wrong Asian Enter Run made, but I'm telling you what, dude, I played it with Ron Edwards, okay? He's a full-ass grown man. So, live your life. I have played Paranoia. Paranoia is really fun. Paranoia is like the extra lives game, so like if your guy dies, you just have a second guy. Super, super funny to play Paranoia. I've never run it at a convention, but I have played it at a convention, and it's always a blast. Yeah. But we did, yeah, yeah, I mean, it doesn't matter if you're a dude, it doesn't matter if you're old, like, fucking play Maid, it's hilarious. It's a hilarious game. I ran it was like, as VTuber, so everybody was like a VTuber, and they had to, like, they had to, like, figure out what their streams were gonna be, and then there was a VTuber cooking contest at the end. It was actually, the second time I ran it, it was really, really, really super fun, because they did, like, a VTuber cooking contest, and everybody, like, anime cooking contests are just a hilarious time. Like, do that as a gimmick, it's hilarious. We had a good time with it. You have to figure out your brand. Yeah, exactly, but the thing about Maid is that all the characters are randomly rolled, they're randomly generated. So and I stick to that. I will not let you pick. Like, you have to randomly roll your character. If you get whatever random thing you get it. Yeah, it's funny. Oh, we're about to hit ads again. I feel like I'm kind of, sort of done with the stream today. But this has been really, really fun. Thank you all for joining and for letting me talk about my favorite D&D stories in addition. We're streaming tomorrow. Have I ever done paid DM work? No, I have not. Although I have... Let me qualify that. I have done demo games for companies and been compensated with swag, t-shirts, that kind of thing. I've never charged for being a DM. Now, let me also say, because been here for 11 hours and I've been ranting, I'm a good DM. I'm a really good DM. I think I'm about as good as you can get. But I've never charged for that service. The most that I've charged, quote unquote, is like we were playing at a game store, and there was like a rental fee for the table. And like if I run at Origins, like there's a fee to join the table. That money doesn't go to me. That money goes to the con organizers. Like I don't get paid. So would I ever charge for DMing? I don't know, because I really just enjoy doing it. Like, it's just fun to me. We used to run at PAX Unplugged, and I would take over the media room, and I would run my game, like, right there in the media room at PAX Unplugged. And I think we had a really good time doing it. As it is, like, VTubing is also my hobby, and I've also kind of turned that into a revenue stream, but it's not, you know, it's just for fun, right? Oh, a couple quick announcements while I'm here. I will be releasing a cover song next month. And it's actually mixed. So I'm just waiting on the art now. That's actually going to happen, finally. We did it professionally. Oh, God. You know, getting paid to DM is kind of a dream of mine, to be honest. But it's weird because I've never asked for money, you know? Like, I've always, like, just done it for fun. Being like a DM that is like famous for DMing, I don't know if I could do that these days. Maybe I would have wanted to do that 15 years ago. You did it professionally. That's crazy. Yeah, talk to me about it sometime off stream. Yeah, what's that? How much do you fucking charge? My rate for editing documents is pretty high at this point. So what's the rate for DMing? You'll have to talk to me offline about it. Maybe I won't ask you questions about it, but yeah. I did talk about Tomb of Horrors. Yeah, for sure. Play players buy a module? That makes sense. Mandatory friend computer. Man, it's been a while since I played Paranoia, but I had a good time playing Paranoia. Paranoia is one of those games I played in Origins. But you can't get out to a game con. I don't like PAX Unplugged for this, because I think PAX Unplugged is way more about like the organized tourney play than it is about like the weird batshit one-shots, because Origins is great for batshit one-shots. Like, I used to always go to Origins and play Call of Cthulhu all weekend, because Call of Cthulhu at Origins is like, I don't care if my character dies, it's a one-shot. So we'll just play Call of Cthulhu all weekend. Or, like, Marvel Superheroes, Mutants and Masterminds, like, I've done all of those. I did a lot of those games. Yeah. 140. Okay. That is fascinating. I've always wondered if I could charge, but I don't. I just like to run for my friends. I do not have a good time. That's great information, though. That's one of the players who wasn't too much any charge less than others. Okay. Per session, what does that work out to, like, $30 an hour? More or less? Because my sessions are usually 4 hours. Like, I feel like 4 hours is a solid D&D session, and then I'm kind of out of juice. But I think I also kind of base that time around the average con slot, because, like, the con slots at Origins are about 4 hours long. But I feel like that's, like, the perfect length for a D&D session. Like, anytime we stream D&D, it was, like, 4 to 5 hours. Anytime I stream now, it's, like, 4 to 5 hours. I'm not charging my friends. We're just gonna stream it. We're gonna do 4E. We're gonna do it on the stream. I'm not charging nobody no money. I'm just gonna run it because it's fun. Gonna factor in prep time. Yeah, of course. That's about 30 to 40 bucks per person. Yeah. That makes sense. My hourly rate, like, is higher than that. like my other profession. But yeah. 4 encounters is too many for a 4-hour session. 3 at most. I know that a lot of the 4E modules were written assuming more encounters than that. 3 max, sometimes 2 in a skill challenge. This is as many as I would do. I feel like any module that's written for 4 encounters, Oh wait, you said 4 hours. I mean, okay, I misread you because I'm crazy. Yeah, so like 4 hours is a perfect length. Encounters, and that's too many. So if I get that module with 4 encounters, I always cut 1 because it's too many. Because you want to. The problem is that, like, a lot of those convention modules, you spend more time on the very beginning and the setup than you do at the very end, and, like, then you're rushing through whatever the final boss is. And that's not a good experience, like, to rush through the final boss. Like, I really feel like you should cut the fat in the middle so that you have a good, like, final encounter in any module. And I feel like every time I get a module that's pre-written, it's always a little bit too packed where the party's going to spend their first hour and a half on the setup. And then you're going to be rushing through the end of the content. Every single time they overstuff it, in my opinion. Like, I feel like I always have to cut, like, some of the middle out. A workshop? I mean, I would definitely teach people how to run a module in 4 hours. Like, give me a published module, like a random one, and I'll tell you how I would fix it to actually run it. Because they're always paced, like, a little bit fucked up in a way. Yeah, getting from sitting. What I usually do is factor in a break, like the midway point. Like, get up, get to the bathroom, whatever. Yeah, it depends. I mean, when I was playing it, like, in a home game, I would definitely, like, we would just be there all night eating pizza. Pacing was different then because you weren't doing it for an audience, right? So if there was, like, an hour of fucking around, nobody cared. Because it was a home game. But I got used to pacing really tight when I was running at a game store because we had the space rented for exactly 4 hours. So, like, if you weren't done in 4 hours, go home. It doesn't matter. So that's why on stream, like, I got used to the pacing. And when I was running, like, my home campaigns, I would be very deliberate about it. Like, I'd be very episodic. Like, I know the story arc is going to be exactly 12 sessions long. And whatever, at the end of 12 sessions, you're fighting the big bad or whatever it is. So it's just, I was very careful about how I paced. I don't want people to get bored. 5-6 hours usually with a break. Yeah, 5-6 hours with a break is totally fine. If there's a break in the middle, that's different. So at a convention, if there's a 4-hour slot, I usually factor in a bathroom break, like, halfway through. And when I was doing Call of Cthulhu, sometimes I would need a break, like, to refactor, like, how am I going to run the second half? Oh, the other thing that I used to run at Origins which I won't run again because I've kind of like ran my juice out. But Dread, which is a game that's run instead of dice, you use Jenga. That was fun. If you ever played that, it's crazy. So you pull a Jenga every time you do like a scary thing. And then if it's really hard, you pull like multiple. And when the tower falls over, your character dies. That's a fun game to run at a convention. Because again, it's really deadly. Yeah, it's really deadly. So like, people, yeah, so people like are okay with dying. Yeah, it's very fun. I would run that on stream, but it would be hard because you'd have to use the Jenga tower. See, the thing is I couldn't stream it. You'd have to be physically present because the part of it is like the pulling the Jenga thing out. And of course, if you wanted to like dramatically sacrifice yourself, you just knock the whole tower over. You're like, oh, I'm going to sacrifice myself. Boom! And you knock the whole tower over. That's really fun to do for horror. But you have to have people physically present. Like, I can't run that over the internet. Oh, my Discord? Let me link you my Discord. If you're on YouTube, let me give you a link to the Discord. Hands are setting up for Dread. Yeah, I have really steady hands and I'm good at Jenga, so that's a problem for sure. Here's a temporary. Oh, that's this hidden use copy button. Let me give you a Discord invite. Actually, let me just get it from the Twitch real quick. Want to join the Discord? We talk shit about tabletop RPGs all the time. We've got a very passionate group of gamers on this Discord. You can't go wrong joining if you're interested in learning more about what we're up to. And thank you guys for coming out and listening to me rant. There is that invite right there. Click on that, and that'll take you into the Discord. Some mastery of Dread, understood. Yeah, Dread is fun. Me? I'm all about the gimmick games. So the last game of Dread that I ran was Metroid Dread. It's a pun, but it also worked. So Metroid is very scary if you're not Samus Aran. If you're just a regular lab scientist and you're dealing with Metroid shit, you're gonna die. I'm all about gimmicks. I'm all about gimmick hooks. I did HoloLive Maid. I did Metroid Dread. It was a good hook. It was really fun. And yeah, man, I'll never forget. Like people exploding themselves in space. It's great. Yeah, exactly. You play the doctors. You play the scientists. They're cannon fodder. Yeah, the space pirates beat their ass. Hollow Maid, very, very fun. Hollow Maid, I don't want to talk too much about like it's so boring to talk about like your specific tabletop stories. But the second time I ran it, I decided to add the Hollow Stars, the boys, and that was a good decision because the boys are trolly and they're really funny to deal with. Yeah, and it's also really fun to like, I don't know. I feel awkward like role-playing people in a way, but as long as it's in a convention center and you're just like you're having a good time, it's all good, you know. But if any Hollow Stars are watching this, I wasn't rude to you. I mean, they did kill Altair. They did do that, but like he had it coming is all I'm saying. All right. Guys, thank you for joining in today. If you can't tell, I have drank some rum, so I'm like very smart right now. But let's go ahead and yeah, I honestly like I had stats for Bedell, but he didn't show up because like my rule was I only had 4 players at that table, and I was only gonna have like 1 star show up for every. So I did never ever get to roleplay Bedell, but like I would have. This Bedell is awesome. Battle's great. Maybe next time I run Maid, we'll have Battle show up. Alright, where are we going? Who's out tonight? Oh, you know what? Rue is live. I'm so excited I finally got to do this. I'm so excited you all tuned in to chat with me about it and talk about the Tomb of Horrors and talk about, so yeah, join the Discord, join the stream, sub to me on YouTube, cover song coming whenever the graphics are done, which, I'm doing the motion graphic part myself, so whenever that's done, it's done. But I'm always waiting on art. So we're about to hit ads, so I'm going to read out now so we don't hit ads. But take care of yourself. Tomorrow night, we're doing Hell Divers. And I want to do a weird game on Thursday, but I also want to play Star Rails, so I'm doing one of those two things. I might do both. I was going to take the day off work, honestly, but I actually have to work on... So, Hell Divers tomorrow at 8 p.m., and then just watch Blue Sky, watch the Discord for updated schedules, and we're going to do it from there. So, see you guys tomorrow night for Super Earth, for Democracy. And it was so nice for those of you that stopped by to talk to me later. I've never played Phasmo, but yeah, catch me offline about that. Maybe we'll do it. It's always hard to schedule because I always have so much stuff going on. But take care.